This peaceful empire is known as Apollinaire, the first empire in history to unite a vast continent. And the symbol of this country is a bird. The goddess descended to earth in the form of a bird, and everyone began to worship her. This is the legend of the birth of Apollinaire. It says that the goddess gifted chosen people with the ability to transform into birds. The people of Apollinaire believed that their roots came from birds. Even in the 5 oldest ducal families, each had a unique bird. Among all Apollinaire's people, love for birds is considered the norm. Besides unconditional faith, people have another reason. On the day when a bird of silver and gold descends to earth, the emperor will taste eternal glory. The interpretations of this prophecy have varied, but to pick a star, you need to look at the sky. People expected the creed to bless the land, and so 100 years have passed, and we find ourselves in an ordinary, peaceful day. Richard Apollinaire came to visit his bird Durahan. He noticed an egg in his bird's cage, but Durahan couldn't take him down because he was a male. Even he has a soulmate, and only Richard is alone. The young Emperor Richard is a knight, a hero of the empire. Richard has always suffered from relationship problems. Everyone said that he needed to receive the new empress as soon as possible. The courtiers select people very strictly, taking into account only personal categories. Since this will be a lifelong companion, Richard wants to meet someone who will draw his heart. One day, he wondered if it was really that difficult, but he had no idea that this timid newborn bird would manage to steal his heart. Amid the hubbub of the festival, a man and a woman met by chance. Then he asked her if she would like to dance with him. It was a fateful meeting that began with a spring wind. The fruit of their love was the current emperor, Richard Apollinaire. Watching his loving parents, he dreamed of a fabulous future, and Richard wanted to receive the love that was meant for him. But unfortunately, his dream has not yet come true. Richard is cold-blooded, incapable of shedding a tear, and he dreams of a love that even teenagers don't dream of. He became the emperor, the one who was able to restrain the demons. He was responsible for stabilizing power and protecting his people. Crusoe notices that Richard seems to be worried about something. Richard thinks he should have been like his father and started dating earlier, and Richard still wonders what kind of egg it is. The guy noted that this egg did not look like an eagle's egg, but he didn't have time to think about it because of the meeting. Count Crusoe brought him evening tea. Richard has no business tomorrow morning. He can rest. Richard hadn't heard such pleasant words for a long time. The first empire in history to unite a vast continent. But he asks who has been following him all this time and persuading him to find the empress. And then Crusoe asks if his standards are too high. Richard thinks that because of his nasty personality, no one wants to date him. It would be great if Richard showed the same interest in women as he does in birds. On leaving the room, Crusoe noticed the egg and asked about it. At that moment, Richard thought he saw the egg move. Crusoe replied that this could not be, and that it was only the wind. He said cautiously that these could be ghosts. They even considered just throwing it away. The goddess Heliana said that the day when the promise to the earth must be fulfilled is already near. She will choose the most outstanding angel of all and send him to the human world. She asks to reveal the conspiracy of people and not allow herself to be revealed. So they have to prepare for this for 200 years. And after this, Heliana will choose a child who will descend to earth. Each follower of the goddess had strength and beautiful appearance, and there was one Haniel whose identity no one knew. The others didn't understand how someone like her could be connected to them. Haniel was asked if she really hoped to be chosen, but the girl insisted that if she trained for 200 years, she could do anything. Then they wanted to see what the half-breed was capable of. Haniel promises himself to win and descend to Earth. Other birds learn to rule and dominate the human world. Haniel worked hard for one single goal. She remembers Heliana saying they had to provide protection. The strong point of demons is powerful magic, and Haniel has only 2 ways to win. There is an eagle that has powerful attack magic, and there is a swan, which has strong healing powers. Haniel's attack power is too weak, but her magical protection is at the highest level. She asked to become a student of the centaur, a fighter of the heavenly world. One day, he asked her if she was sure she knew how to fight well enough. Haniel assured him that she could definitely handle it. She asks the centaur to take care of himself, as they will not see each other for a long time. Sometimes Haniel just dreams of being paired with a great male. But everyone loves big, beautiful, and colorful birds. But she promises to prove that silver plumage does not bring bad luck. Thus, the goddess announced that Haniel would descend to Earth. Haniel has the most beautiful soul Heliana has ever seen. The goddess promises that Haniel will be able to cope. Haniel wishes the others luck in remaining in the heavenly world. With these words, Haniel went to the human world, taking the form of that very egg. When Richard and Crusoe were talking, Haniel heard their conversations. If it comes out before 30 days, then it will not be possible to use the magical power correctly. But, one way or another, the heroine wondered where she was. She noted that everything around was quiet, thinking that she was hallucinating. Since she was still sleepy, she decided to sleep a little. The servants discussed this egg, that Durakan would eat it. Durahan is an eagle, and it is normal for birds to eat other birds. One of the servants decided to give the egg to the chef to cook it. The egg in her hand was shaking, making Haniel feel dizzy. The chef agreed to cook the egg if it was an appetizer for His Majesty, and then Haniel heard that they were going to fry her. When the chef was about to break the egg, it didn't even crack. It was said that it does not break under normal impacts, but this is an exception. Even when the boss dropped it on the floor, it remained intact. And at that moment, Haniel realized why she had chosen the owl's nest. The chef broke out in a cold sweat when he noticed that the egg was glowing. It started to roll away, and the chief ordered to catch it. The other servants heard shouts and noise coming from the kitchen. Crusoe asks them what they are doing here. The chef says that the egg escaped, even though it sounds funny. Richard and Crusoe recognize the symbol painted on the egg. Although the prediction is vague, this is definitely the egg from the legend. Crusoe notices that this egg is larger than usual. Richard reminds him that he said yesterday that there was a ghost in the egg. Crusoe begins to justify himself for not seeing the symbol. He said that something needs to be done about this egg. Haniel realized at that moment that she seemed to have been saved. The magicians felt powerful energy coming from the egg. There is elemental magic that is used by wizards. And besides this, there are also the dark abilities of demons. Holy power was a separate direction. Richard wondered what the bird that hatched would be like. He would like it to be a small hawk. The egg needs to be properly cared for to ensure the chick is healthy. Durahan spent the whole day yesterday hatching an egg, but today he disappeared somewhere. Thanks to the egg, Richard can calm down for a while. Even the ministers today spoke only about the creed. Haniel feels the warm hand of a kind person. Now she can relax and sleep. Richard thought he heard a sound coming from the egg, but he thinks he imagined it. Whoever hatches it must take care of it as well as Durakan. Crusoe suggests talking to the egg, as one does with a child in the womb. Richard tells him to get lost if he's going to talk nonsense. The maid Catherine says that she read in a book that it is useful to communicate even with plants. Crusoe complained to her that Richard was ignoring his words. Catherine seems to be more seductive than Count Crusoe. Now, Richard wondered what he should tell. The only thing that came to his mind was that he could tell stories about himself. He says that the same song about the Empress is constantly played. First, they ask for the Empress to be brought, and then they make a fuss about the birth of an heir. Haniel notes that his voice is warm and gentle. The next day, Richard tells how he killed a crowd of talkative ministers. Haniel had heard before that people were constantly waging wars. The next day, Richard says he feels guilty about the dead soldiers. The next day, he said that demons had attacked the border zone. Haniel was scared, realizing that they had started to act. But Richard tells the egg not to worry, as that has already been taken care of. Haniel wants to quickly enter the inner world and trample the demons. She has a wild desire to trample their spines. One day, Richard told me how lonely he was, although Haniel felt like there were a lot of people around. But the heroine saw herself in Richard, because she too was lonely. 30 days have passed since Haniel descended into the human world. The moment has finally come when she comes out of her shell. When Crusoe asked how long it would be before the egg hatched, Richard said he didn't know. Crusoe hopes it won't take several decades. They jumped up from their seats, noticing that the egg was cracking. Richard orders all ministers and artists to be summoned immediately. Everyone started to discuss that the egg looked smaller than they thought. Richard orders everyone to be quiet and not make a sound. Soon the egg began to glow, just like last time. Richard notices that it's finally starting to break. One must not interfere with the sacred egg's struggle for its own birth. Richard had decided in advance that the bird would be called Phoenix. He wondered again who might hatch. Everyone froze instantly as the eggshell fell off. And when the bird hatched, everyone began to discuss who it was. Someone said it was just a regular fluff ball, but Richard tells him to shut up, giving him a look. Richard admits he's as shocked as everyone else. He wondered if this was the symbol of their empire. The ministers admitted that they were seeing such a bird for the first time. Richard asked what kind of bird it was, thinking it might be a sparrow or a tit. In appearance, it resembles a lark or a tit, but it is definitely not an eagle or a hawk. Richard said that he knew this perfectly well without them. As the legend says, this bird has golden feathers. Now Richard announces the birth of a creed. The rumor of the appearance of the sacred bird spread throughout the empire. Her birth was enough to increase the respect of the emperor. Later, Richard asked the bird if it was truly sacred, but he is sure that this is so because the bird has golden feathers. The count said that the bird might change in the future. Perhaps, if certain conditions are met, she will change her appearance, and maybe she will become like this bird in the painting. They are sure that if it is a sacred bird, it will definitely change. Richard asked why they were only talking about this now. Richard doesn't believe that Count Crusoe could be right. He asks the bird again if it is really a phoenix. In response to his question, the bird nodded. He was surprised that she seemed to understand everything he said. Richard noticed that the bird wanted to be released. When he opened the cage, she sat on his shoulder. Richard doesn't understand what this behavior is. The bird took off and began to chirp loudly, as if talking to him. He thought he should give her a different name because she was too cute. But judging by Phoenix's reaction, he doesn't want that. Richard promises to keep the name and asks him to relax. Richard is also confused by the question of the sacred bird. But this is not something that can be shared with subjects. You can't show weakness and rely on someone. Richard doesn't know how long it will take him to get used to being alone. He needed someone who could remain his friend. Even so, Phoenix seems too small. Richard thinks the bird is simply getting bigger. But such an assumption does not bode well. In that case, it would be better if it remains like that. Richard noticed that the bird's eyes sparkled. Still, he decided that she wasn't so bad. Richard says goodnight to Phoenix. At this point, Haniel managed to see everything clearly. Richard's arched back and his body are like a sculpture. Plus, stunning looks with golden hair. Even an eagle that thinks it's beautiful doesn't come close. No one can find a better partner than this person. Haniel liked everything about this man. That's why she's confident that Richard will be her match. Haniel was scared when she saw the eagle flying in. He wanted to give her the worm, but she doesn't want to eat it. Durahan shows her how to eat properly. Haniel reminds him that she is a sacred bird. But Durakan asked her, "So what?" and she became indignant. When Richard approached the cage, Haniel immediately turned her attention to him. Richard was surprised that Phoenix recognized him and flew to him. He remembers that she hasn't eaten anything since yesterday. Summoning Crusoe, he asks him to bring him food for Phoenix. Crusoe asked, confused, what this bird ate. Richard suggested grain products, and Haniel nodded. Crusoe orders food to be brought here and gives today's schedule. Richard thinks Phoenix likes him. He also mentions that Phoenix understands their speech, so he thinks he can ask directly. He asked if she would become bigger than she was now. Crusoe was surprised when he realized that Phoenix really understood everything. Then Haniel will definitely become a bird like in the picture. Crusoe can no longer wait for the bird to grow bigger. Haniel was outraged that Crusoe compared her to eagles. Her destiny lies in the human world, as the goddess said. Haniel promises Richard to surprise him. He just needs to wait a little bit. All ingredients are made only from things that the bird can eat. Haniel is surprised that she is only now being given such food. She flew up to the plate and began to eat. The servants watch her with admiration, standing nearby. But Richard asks them not to look, as Phoenix is embarrassed. Although she had already finished eating and was lying on the table from overeating, Crusoe doesn't like Richard's bad temper. But he is glad that the Emperor is in a good mood today. Today, in addition to this, he has a busy schedule. Haniel chirps, thanking Richard for the food. Richard calls Phoenix a sweet, charming bird. Haniel didn't expect them to move straight to kissing. Birds of the heavenly kingdom develop relationships gradually. But Richard kisses her even before they start a relationship. Haniel likes the fact that he is so active. From today onwards, Richard will be taking Phoenix with him to events. Carton noticed that the bird really does always follow His Majesty. Crusoe remembers that the animals didn't like Richard before. Only Durakan and the imperial horse were exceptions. Even the favorite, who accompanied the Emperor and Empress, was also frightened. Richard doesn't want to admit it, but it's true. He believes that Phoenix is smart, and she recognizes her owner. Then they started getting ready to go about their business, because today's schedule is busy. Outside, the maid told Carton that the weather was wonderful today. They discussed the imminent arrival of winter and what was in the border zone. They say that everything went well there, and everyone was probably destroyed. Head maid Carton is an officer of the Shadow Order. She is currently responsible for the official security of the Emperor. Amanda has outstanding demon hunting skills, but still, when Catherine remembers that day, she cannot relax. She doesn't understand why the demons were rushing towards Richard like madmen. There is something about His Majesty that attracts demons. Catherine knows that she must protect him at all costs. Hunters were stationed in the imperial palace to be ready for anything. Everyone around continued to be touched by the little bird. Richard knew the servants whispered as he passed with Phoenix. One of them said that she wanted to have the same bird. But she was reminded that she already kept several birds. That's true, but she was enchanted when she saw Phoenix. They have no doubt that there are other birds with similar feathers. Richard doesn't like that they do whatever they want. He suddenly said that from today on, he would tighten the procedures for breeding birds. He told the Duchess that she should take care of the birds she already had. And if she has free time, then it would be better for her to get to work. He leaves, realizing that there is only useless chatter here. Richard isn't sure there's another bird that's smart. Now he can't deny that he is fascinated by Phoenix. Haniel stole his heart completely. When he hears sweet chirping, loneliness becomes less scary. Richard thinks he shouldn't let Phoenix out without him. He hopes this is enough to keep her safe. Crusoe tried to call Haniel to him so that she would fly to him, but in response, he received only her angry look and quiet chirping. Richard knows that Phoenix won't just approach just anyone. Carton also decided to try to call the bird to her. She was surprised when Phoenix sat in her arms. Richard and Crusoe were no less surprised. Richard doesn't understand how she can be so happy while in someone else's arms. Sometimes Haniel feels like Richard is simply unperturbed. Haniel didn't expect them to take baths together before the wedding. She thought she would die of shame, but she forgot about it as soon as he scratched her with his finger. No matter how much Haniel thought about it, Richard was the right partner for her. For an angel and a human to become a couple, certain conditions must be met. You must carefully keep that you are a protector from heaven. Whenever Richard called Phoenix, his voice softened. She is sure that this man will love her. Richard wishes Phoenix could talk like a parrot. When he ascended the throne, no one called him by name anymore. That's why he wants Phoenix to call him by his name if she can speak one day. Haniel began to chirp, saying that he could trust her. Richard mentions that they discussed the wedding at today's meeting. This comes at just the right time for Haniel, who is also looking for a mate. He wondered if it was really greedy to meet his love. He also wondered whether fate was predetermined by heaven. They say that an angel with beautiful wings pierces the heart with an arrow. Richard shows that he wants the same arrow to fly at him. Haniel plays along with him and falls, supposedly from a shot. Richard, seeing this, laughed, pleased with her reaction. At this same moment, somewhere a man begs a demon not to attack him. Demons appeared in the border zone, but there were no casualties. Invasions of minor demons are becoming more frequent. It is necessary to increase the military forces of magicians and warriors with enchanted blades. Richard was lost in thought, not listening to what Crusoe was telling him. He is always kind to Phoenix, but is constantly angry with Crusoe. After all, Richard can't live his whole life with birds. He believes that it would be better to live a happy life with the Empress. Now they have a problem they can't put off. Crusoe suggests finding someone incognito to date. But Richard has already said that he doesn't like dating. However, this matter cannot be postponed indefinitely. Now the Emperor must definitely find his Empress. Crusoe suggests searching in countries beyond the continent. His jaw nearly dropped to the floor when Richard agreed. Crusoe promises to begin compiling the list immediately. Richard tells Phoenix that he must show it to the delegation. Today, in the courtroom, Haniel sensed the presence of a demon. While in the body of a bird, she cannot detect demonic energy. But Haniel is going to deal with that later. Haniel was afraid that he would find out she was an angel before he fell in love with her. But Heliana assured her that this would not happen. But Haniel began to worry that she would be loved even in her bird form. To this, Heliana did not answer and disappeared. Then, Haniel woke up, not understanding what kind of dream it was. It's strange that this voice disappeared just then. Richard turned around and noticed that Phoenix had already woken up. The other maids were also touched by her sweet appearance. Richard orders the royal partner to be summoned. She brings His Majesty the cloaks he asked for. Carton asks Richard what about the cloak. She offers to try it on, assuring him that he will like it. When they dressed up Phoenix, the maids practically squealed with cuteness. The royal artists are ready. They can start right now. Richard warned that the paintings painted today would hang all over the palace. Therefore, the emperor asks them to give their best. At first, he hoped that the symbol of faith would be transformed into an eagle or a hawk. But Richard realized that Phoenix had its own charm. Looking at the painting, the servants wanted to see the bird in real life. They are jealous that the maids in the palace see her every day. As soon as one maid turned around, she saw the real Phoenix. Before they could react, another servant ran between them. He informs Crusoe that their bird is missing. Crusoe fell to his knees at this shocking news. He doesn't know who to call to look for her. At that moment, Richard appears behind him, asking what happened. Crusoe didn't even have time to answer him before he ordered all the knights to be summoned. Meanwhile, Haniel flew into the backyard, noticing the food. The maids who were broadcasting the laundry noticed her and recognized her. They were surprised that Phoenix had flown all the way here. They tried to catch her to return her to the Emperor, but it didn't work. Haniel doesn't understand why they're all following her. She goes back inside because it's quite dangerous outside. Back in the cage, Haniel waited for Richard to return. She had been flying for too long, so she was already tired and fell asleep. In the evening, Richard returns after an unsuccessful search. He turned around and saw Phoenix sleeping in his cage. Taking her in his arms, Richard said that she scared him. The bird looks at him in surprise, not understanding what is happening to him. Richard asked Phoenix not to leave him like this again. Haniel realized that Richard had been looking for her all this time. The Emperor also says that he does not want to lock her in a cage. Phoenix chirps, saying that she will always be by his side. The Persian continent is a land where small kingdoms have gathered. They allied with Apollinaire, sometimes taking part in wars with demons. Demons hid, disguising themselves as humans to torment them. Thus, people began to doubt each other. To resist the demons, Apollinaire and the kingdoms had to further strengthen their alliance. Crusoe says that there are many beautiful women in the kingdom of Banre. He reflects that they are mysterious because they are in the desert. The Emperor must be present at the ball as long as possible. When he didn't answer, Crusoe decided to take his leave. Richard realized that the wedding would then take place. He realizes how quickly Crusoe completed his job. Commander Chad came in and said that this was what Richard was talking about. He also knows that Count Crusoe is too zealous, and he knows that their emperor is strong not only in appearance. Chad's sister, mentioned as a candidate for empress, was unable to take the place. Every time Chad saw her blush at the sight of the emperor, it seems that His Majesty did not like anyone. If the emperor has no one, the process of selecting candidates will begin soon. Richard asks the Lord if he has anything to say. Chad just doesn't understand what Count Crusoe is worried about. Crusoe seems to be too open in communication. Chad invites him to have a cup of tea with ladies his own age. Then Richard asks him how much longer he should put off the wedding. At this point, Chad asks the emperor for forgiveness. He accepts the fact that Phoenix is actually cute. She is even prettier than in the paintings hanging in the palace. Richard has already checked everything, so Chad can go. Finally, now everyone has left. The windows are closed, and everything will be fine. Opening the cage, Richard allows Phoenix to exit. He tells her that from tomorrow, there will be guests in the palace. He noticed that she always answered him, but it was unclear what. He really wants Phoenix to learn to speak. Soon it will be 100 days since the bird hatched from the egg. In Apollinaire's empire, 100% is of great importance. He invites Phoenix to throw a ball in honor of the anniversary. She chirps, saying that it would be better to arrange their wedding right away. In 100 days, Haniel will be able to become human. The first thing she wants to do when this happens is kiss Richard. One after another, delegations began to arrive. The palace began to fill with life, thanks to the influx of people. One of these delegations may include the Emperor's future wife. There were many glances turned towards the Emperor. Crusoe is incredibly happy that today they will find out who will become Empress. Fortunately, His Majesty shines even brighter. Crusoe whispers to Richard to smile. This will help women show sympathy towards him. Crusoe tearfully begs Richard to do it. Richard is very worried about Phoenix, whom he left alone at home. But taking her with you would be a bad idea. He plans to finish and return as soon as possible. When they arrive, Crusoe urges Richard to smile. Richard asks him to stop making noise and move forward. The kingdom of Barb is quite large beyond the Western Sea. In fact, Richard understands why Crusoe is so fussed. The mystery of the Barbe family is enhanced by a thin veil. They have characteristic ash-colored eyes. The girl said that Richard is indeed a cold person, as rumors say. The Emperor seems to have no interest in her. She told her brother that he was not in the best position either. But he doesn't understand his guilt that his wife has taken a lover. Although from the very beginning his life was unclean, he must make an effort to find himself a bride. He believes that he should spend time with aristocrats. She doesn't understand how long this will all go on. Her gaze fell on the emperor, and she admitted that he was indeed handsome. She is even sure that she is unlikely to meet anyone more beautiful. She didn't expect that someone could be brighter in real life than in a portrait. Seeing a bird in the portrait, she asked what kind of quail it was. Richard gave her an angry look, surprised that she would throw out such words. One of the emperor's servants cried out that this bird was the symbol of the empire, but everyone else remembered that the bird had to be bigger than the eagle. They did not understand how such an insignificant bird could be considered a symbol. Barbet is a weak kingdom compared to the empire. Calling the symbol of the empire a quail was too rude. The girl's brother apologizes, saying there was a misunderstanding. It turns out that Barb's reputation has already suffered because of this. Richard is asked not to take this to heart. Jacques-Pierre says that these are people of the desert, and they understand little. Richard did the right thing by not taking Phoenix with him. Jacques asks him to rest before the Kingdom of Lennox sends its delegation. Jacques is also upset about the situation and wants to see Phoenix. Richard mentions that today marks 100 days since the bird hatched from its egg, the moment when the goddess returned to Earth and the empire was born. Jacques reflects that in honor of such a date, he should prepare a gift. Haniel is bored in her cage, not understanding why there are so many guests here today. She hopes that Richard will love her even when she becomes human. Haniel has already fallen in love with him so much that she is ready to die. There are no problems in the love between Richard and Haniel yet. She needs to get started on her mission and start fighting the demons as soon as possible. Haniel hopes that this time of peace will continue. The Empire organized a grand ball in honor of the 100 Days Festival. The delegations expected to see Phoenix in person. However, the transformation into a human was interrupted for some reason. Haniel thought she was in some kind of trouble. Richard noted that Phoenix didn't seem to be in the best of health. He says that food will be brought soon and asks him to rest. Haniel decided that she would eat first and then sort things out. Soon the maid Catherine came and brought food. Richard immediately noticed that Phoenix was feeling better. He thinks that her cuteness is her greatness. After she ate, she was going to return to Richard. But suddenly, everything started to blur before my eyes. Haniel realizes she needs to run away now. At that moment, the emperor was informed that a gift had been brought to him. Their kingdom, like the empire, considers birds sacred. Richard thought that a similar statue should be made for Phoenix. He is confident that the Phoenix statue will be much better. When he looked down, he discovered that the bird was no longer there. Due to her good life, Haniel became lazy and even forgot how to fly. When she sat down on the branch, she noticed a man who was breathing heavily. But Haniel noted that he was a rather handsome male. When he opened his eyes, he saw a bird, calling it a quail. Haniel flew up to him and began to chirp indignantly. She thinks it's impudent to call her a quail. Feeling the same thing again as before, she realized that now everything would work out. Finally, Haniel turned from a bird into a human. Now all she has to do is find clothes. But now she can't let anyone discover her. Suddenly, Richard, who found her, appears from behind the bushes. Haniel had to transform back into a bird. Richard told her that she had scared him by flying so far. The guy said that this bird was very cute. Judging by Richard's reaction, he didn't like his words. The boy says the bird gently stroked his face with its feathers. Richard doesn't like Phoenix being affectionate towards other people. Therefore, he asks her not to fly close to other people because they can be dangerous. He thinks she is smarter and more cunning than he thought. Crusoe informed him that representatives from different countries were already waiting for him. Richard apologizes for locking Phoenix out, promising to return soon. When he left, Haniel became human, starting to look for the mirror. She hasn't seen herself like this for a long time and only vaguely remembers her face. She can't be mistaken for a pervert, so she needs to get dressed. She mentally apologizes to Richard for taking his clothes. In her bird form, Haniel was always confident. But in human form, it is not inferior to any of the heavenly substances. Haniel hopes that Richard will like her. Soon the banquet began in the Crystal Hall. Richard had been watching the Barbet family all this time. Crusoe noticed this and decided to see where he was looking. He noticed Richard looking at Princess Melissa. Crusoe couldn't even imagine that after all this, Melissa could like Richard. Soon Richard said that it was time to go back because he was tired. Crusoe thought that next time he would have to arrange a meeting for them. Richard returns to the room, not understanding how the banquet could be so tiring. He froze in place when he noticed someone lying in his bed. He wondered how this man managed to get in here. The emperor realized from her hair that it was a woman. When Richard drew his sword, Haniel sensed danger. She turned around sharply, and Richard put his sword to her neck. Haniel doesn't understand why he's angry and thinks she's a demon. Before she could say anything, Richard asked again if she was a demon. He saw that she was clutching the blanket to herself, thinking that there might be a weapon in there. He decided that he would attack immediately if he noticed even the slightest sign. Suddenly, at that moment, a strong wind blew from outside the window, and when it stopped, Haniel was no longer there. Richard thought she had escaped, or might have been using a disguise as a demon. After this, Crusoe enters the room, apologizing for the late intrusion. He asks if Richard could tell him who the lady was that he was staring at the banquet. Noticing the sword in his hands, Crusoe asks why he needs it. Richard asks the Earl to call Sir Chad here. He says there was a break-in and Phoenix disappeared. The Imperial Palace has established conditions to block dark magic. Be that as it may, even the Apollinaire Empire cannot cope with the demons. Thanks to the wind, Haniel was not caught and became a bird again. She can't believe that Richard tried to kill her. It seemed to her that he would immediately recognize her at first sight. So the heroine decided that she didn't want to stay here anymore. She flew away with the thought that she would do whatever she wanted. First, Haniel needs to find a deserted place. She left her dress in Richard's room, and her back was cold. She still has a hard time controlling her transformation into a human. She found a veil and had no choice but to wear it. Only now did she realize that she was a stranger to Richard. However, it still upset her so much that she started crying. Suddenly, someone entered this room and she got scared. Haniel hid behind her clothes, listening to the sounds. Looking out, she saw His Highness from the Barb family with some girl. Haniel immediately recognized the guy who called her Quail. She thinks she should have hit him in the face harder then. Suddenly, the heroine felt like she was about to fall. The girl kissing His Highness was frightened. She thought there was no one here, so now she left. He thought that everyone had long since gone to their quarters. When he asked who was there, Haniel began to think about what she should do. She doesn't know if she'll be able to escape from here. From the clothes on Barbie, he thought she was Melissa's maid. Haniel was at a loss, not knowing how to get out of this now. If you look closely, she even reminds him of someone. Sitting down next to him, the guy asks what's going on. He said that his disrupted plans needed to be compensated for, but his wish was cut short by the fact that someone came here. It turned out to be Richard, ordering the prince to return to him. Prince Barb said he was just about to leave. Richard noticed his red face, his lipstick smudged, and his button undone. He says that the prince has no dignity to do such a thing. The prince apologizes for this, but says that the girl behind his back is very shy. And so he asks the emperor to leave the room. Richard leaves, saying that they must quickly catch the demon. When the prince wanted to say something to Haniel, she threw something at him. He didn't have time to object, because the heroine had already disappeared. Haniel hates him with all his soul, wanting to beat him up for the Quail. She thought that now she needed to find her weapon. Everyone was worried about Phoenix, thinking about the worst outcome. Crusoe said that there was nothing to eat in Phoenix. But in reality, the emperor is the only one who needs to cry now. Anyone who has entered the emperor's room is dangerous. Richard thinks it might be a high-ranking demon. He's even scared to imagine that something could have happened to Phoenix. Crusoe wondered if Durakan could do anything. This bird is very smart. It has helped Richard many times. He was told that there were no traces of dark magic anywhere, so it couldn't be demons. No matter how strong the demon is, it is impossible to completely eliminate the traces. But, thinking about this, the emperor realized something. One of the servants said that she saw this silver hair. The maid who was with the prince also had hair like that. Richard orders Prince Barbet to be brought immediately. The prince asked why they were looking for this particular maid, but in response to his question, Richard ignores him. All questions and answers are spoken by Crusoe. He considers it excessive to address a member of the royal family in such a shameless manner. They are already calling Timur by name, asking him to answer without lies. Thus, Timur states that most of the maids in their kingdom have dark hair, and yesterday's maid's hair was also brown. He says he can bring her in so they can check. But Crusoe replied that it was not worth the guard's attention. Now Timur wants to find this girl himself. Yesterday, he couldn't find anyone similar among Melissa's maids. Even though his face was covered by a veil, he clearly remembers those eyes. Although, one glance is enough to see this hair. Haniel flew for several days from the northern capital. First, she needs to rest because she is very tired. That's why she envies big birds because they have big wings. Hanyul wanted to rest for a while, but something was shining so brightly. When she stood up, she saw the weapon she was looking for. This is definitely the staff she needs. This staff is visible only to her through divine magic. Now, Hanyul was fully prepared. After finding the staff, she must remain human for some time. She will only be able to transform after some time. Hanyul doesn't even know how much time must pass. Suddenly, someone launched an arrow in her direction, but she managed to dodge. Those who deal with demons could not defeat them all. Therefore, Emperor Apollinaire orders to remain in the carriage. The Empress, his wife, tells him to be careful. The Empress asks the wounded Leona to hold out a little longer. The woman noticed that her lips had turned purple. Hanyul realized that the arrow was actually aimed at these people, and the condition of the knight Leona seems critical. If Hanyul leaves them, they will soon die. As soon as she showed herself, the knights became wary, asking who she was. A mentor once said that a smile is a good thing, but as soon as she smiled, the knights thought that she, too, was being pursued by demons. But compared to them, Hanyul's outfit looks different. Luxurious clothes, long hair, leather boots. The Empress is told that it is better to stop fighting, as Leona is wounded. The Emperor orders them to get into the carriage, and under no circumstances leave it. A demon appeared out of nowhere, saying that she wanted to kill even more. The Emperor, noticing the danger, orders the carriage to be guarded. The demoness directs dark forces at them, ordering them to die. In particular, their arrows are saturated with poison, which spreads throughout the human body. Hanyul managed to catch the arrow and break it, protecting the Empress. She noticed that there were a few more demons behind the tree. Hanyul asked the demon how she dared to attack people in front of her. The demoness didn't expect that people could be so fast. Hanyul was so fast that the demoness didn't have time to notice her. Hanyul ends up attacking her from above, hitting her on the head. Hanyul loves this feeling. She loves killing demons. The knight asks her to reveal her identity, thinking that she is a mercenary. But the Emperor says that if that were the case, she would target their lives. First, they need to hurry to the village, because Leona is in bad condition. If they go to the fortress, they will definitely find a way. To Hanyul's surprise, they invite her to come with them. The Empress wants to repay her in full, but now the wounds come first, so Hanyul followed along with them. She thought she could help Leona with her wound without being noticed. The Empress assumes that her clothing is connected with something royal. The nobles also use good fabric, but it is different from that of the royal families. Empress Apollinaire certainly cannot help but notice the difference. Herodion and Scarlet, who did not know each other before their first meeting, fell in love at first sight. For these two, Richard was like a blessing. From a young age, he was diligent and showed great talent in fencing. But the reason he hadn't met a girl yet was because of his character. Everything changed when he reached marriageable age. In Apollinaire's empire, power is reinforced by the authority of the Empress. The parents dreamed that their son would find his beloved. This is the reason why Scarlet cares so much about Hanyul. She considers Hanyul to be the most beautiful person she has ever seen. Scarlet decides to ask who Hanyul is, that she was able to fight demons. She also wonders why Hanyul was walking alone in the forest. Scarlet immediately apologized for the large number of questions. The teacher told Hanyul to use evasive answers. Scarlet remembers that Queen Sylvania has silver hair. That's why she thought that Hanyul was from there. Hanyul had no choice but to agree with her. Scarlet thought she was hurt when she caught the arrow. Plus, there was monster poison in there, which made her wary. But Hanyul reassured her that everything was fine and that it ran in their family. The Emperor and Empress always had a problem with monsters, but the demon's poison has no effect on the main character. Scarlet's necklace doesn't react to Hanyul, meaning she's right for Richard. The wizard is currently busy preparing a medicine for the young girl. There is an order from His Majesty to provide assistance to people who have been attacked by a demon. Scarlet quickly realized that talking wouldn't help them. They were told that there was an urgent patient, but they refused. Hanyul noticed that Leona's hands had already weakened. She thought she was dead, but checked to make sure she wasn't. But if we leave things like this, she will still die. Hanyul doesn't know how to save a person while hiding his divine power. The mentor told her to sell herbs if she needed money. She needs to imagine that the plant is a medicinal herb, and divine power will flow through it. Everything is ready. All that remains is to start lying shamelessly. She started rehearsing that she was a drug seller. She got out of the carriage, and Scarlet asked what happened. Hanyul says that if they delay, Leona will die. She needs to do everything as shamelessly as possible. She shows them the herb, saying that she has a wonderful medicine. Scarlet remembers the previous merchant telling her the same thing. Haniel mentions that it is a rare plant that has been passed down through generations. Scarlet can see in her eyes that she is telling the truth. She wondered if she should trust him again. Understanding that there were doubts, Haniel said no, then no. But Scarlet stopped her and said that she would buy the plant. Now all she had to do was add some sacred power unnoticed. Haniel then began feeding Leona the mixture. Luckily, she has enough strength to help the person. Scarlet and her husband are very hopeful that this will help. After some time, Leona woke up, sitting up in bed. Scarlet immediately ran up to her, asking how she was feeling. Leona replied that she felt better and even had more strength. Others also noticed that Leona did not have a single scar. When Leona approached Haniel, the latter became worried. Leona thanks her for saving her life, wanting to thank her. Haniel wanted to return to the imperial palace as soon as possible, but she simply couldn't miss such a delicious dinner. Leona pushed plates of different foods towards her and asked her to try them. For a moment, Haniel thought about how much she missed Richard. Scarlet thought that Haniel was treating people with rare plants because she had a kind heart. She is literally sure that this girl is the daughter of the Queen of Sylvania, and she thinks that Haniel is the best fit for the role of Empress. Now all she has to do is convince Richard. Once Scarlet told her son that she had found worthy girls, but he brushed it off. The woman wondered how she could convince this stubborn man. Scarlet heard that the selection of the Empress was beginning in the Empire. People speculate about how long the Empress's seat remained empty. Of course, Scarlet was delighted with this news. Crusoe noticed that Richard was much more worried than before. He knows that His Majesty has become very attached to Phoenix. But Crusoe is sure that this is because the Empress's place is empty. They hoped that someone suitable would emerge from among the delegations. Due to the gloomy atmosphere, the delegations left without understanding what was happening. Crusoe reminds Richard that the Empress's throne must not be left empty. They must immediately announce and begin the selection process. But in response, Richard said that he didn't even want to hear about it. Crusoe assures that the Phoenix will return when everything is fine in the Empire. Richard doesn't understand what nonsense he's talking about. All he can think about now is his Phoenix. Scarlet informed Haniel about the selection of the Empress. She doesn't understand why the girl is so angry about this. Haniel asked if she meant that Richard was looking for a wife. Scarlet thought that Haniel might know him. The heroine confirmed that they know each other well, but Scarlet remembers that Richard went to the parade to fight demons. She thought that it was then that he returned with love in his heart. Scarlet is sure that Haniel is definitely his destiny. Haniel stated that Richard was very kind to her. The woman can't believe her ears that her son can be like this. One day, Richard said that he intended to meet the one who was destined for him. Scarlet is sure he kept the throne empty because he was waiting for Haniel. In Scarlet's eyes, it all looks very romantic. He left his beloved because of his situation, and the girl who traveled a great distance to be with him. Without any options, Scarlet believes that she must bring them together. She also admits the thought that this girl is lying, but she has nothing to lose. Anyway, when they return to the palace, they will find out the result. So Scarlet asks Haniel if she really wants to marry Richard. Haniel confirmed this, saying that Richard was already her chosen one. She suddenly says that you need to take responsibility if you see someone naked. Haniel assures that she will be with Richard, and they will have many children. But the only thing that confuses her is the election of the Empress. Haniel just wanted to create a happy life like the other angels. But in the end, she always remains alone. Scarlet is perfectly aware that she is already close to Richard. That's why the woman volunteers to help Haniel. She says she knows Duke Greta. This way, she will repay her debt to Haniel. She invites her to go to the palace and make her a candidate for the throne. Soon, elections for the Empress were announced throughout the country. Richard is still very upset about the loss of the bird. Crusoe feels a little sorry for him, but he did everything he could. Chad asked the Count why Richard had suddenly stopped searching for the Phoenix. At first, they thought it was the work of high-ranking demons, but the chief wizards say that there is no trace left of them. They suspected that there was discontent among the wizards, but this was impossible. These people are much more devoted to His Majesty than anyone else. There are magicians in the Empire who study the magic of everyday life, and there are also mages who fight with magical enhancements, and the one who is called the Absolute Master. The Master of the Sword, Richard. His Majesty personally selected the most outstanding magicians. Chad suspects that the rebels are to blame. Nothing was heard from them. But that's usually how it all starts. They need to conduct a thorough search of the palace to make sure there are no spies among them. They're beefing up security, but it's unclear what Richard is thinking. It seems that the loss of the phoenix greatly saddened the emperor. Crusoe asks not to worry, suggesting to watch for a while. The most pressing issue now is preparation for the election of the empress. The heads of the 5 ducal houses were also looking forward to this. Greta Falcons, Dossman Owls, Pear Eagles, West Pollington Doves, and Modron Swans. Crusoe says that they are all filled with joy. He heard that the West Pollington family had recently adopted a daughter. The only thing missing is Duke Greta to make it 4 candidates. But Crusoe thinks that Greta will not send anyone after all. They discussed it, and Crusoe offers Chad a bet. KM Greta, the head of the Greta family, asks Scarlet what she just said. She repeats that she asks the lady she has brought to lead her to the candidates for the election of the Empress. Cam states that the previous Empress belongs to their line, and it is bad to indulge ambitions. But Scarlet clarifies that this lady is Richard's lover. Cam clearly didn't expect the news that he had a girlfriend. Scarlet tells what she managed to find out about their unhappy love. She believes that we can't just turn a blind eye to this. Cam notes that Scarlet has always been compassionate. He says that one should not trust people so recklessly. But Scarlet says her husband agrees with her too. Cam Greta asks if they managed to find out anything about this girl. If the imperial family directly nominates a candidate, questions will arise. That's why Scarlet asks him to say that this girl is their distant relative. The nobles will certainly be against a foreigner of royal blood. Parents constantly interfere in their children's marriages, so they won't be blamed for it. But Cam believes that whoever Haniel is, they will be criticized. Still, Scarlet's radiant smile intrigued him, and he asked who she had brought. They meet Haniel, and Scarlet asks her to meet Duke Greta. Haniel introduced herself by giving her name and asked to be taken care of. Haniel didn't expect to be greeted so brightly and on such a grand scale. It has all the dishes she's always wanted to try. She wants to try eating like Richard. Scarlet asks if she likes the food. Haniel is surprised that Scarlet told her that she would make her a candidate. If she enters the fight with confidence, no one will doubt her. At the same time, Haniel will check whether there really is a demon among the ministers. Soon, Haniel thanks Kana Greta for the wonderful dishes. If there are demons lurking in the palace, Haniel intends to get rid of them. Cam reflects that appearance can be improved, but imperial etiquette needs to be worked on. He thought that Haniel was truly a noble person. Cam orders his servant to invite the tailor at dawn. He wants to dress up Haniel because Scarlet told him that she is engaged in trade. The next day, the designer Narnia arrived. Scarlet warns her not to tell Haniel that she is the former empress. Narnia wondered how there could be a person in the empire who didn't know Scarlet. Since Narnia decided to serve the former empress, she will make anyone shine. Scarlet is convinced that Narnia is the best designer in the country. Soon, Narnia enters the building and meets with Haniel. She greets him by saying that she has come to make a dress for her. Narnia is confident that this girl can become empress. Narnia asked Haniel what color she liked best. Narnia thinks that pink will enhance Haniel's beauty, and the light blue color will be able to emphasize her innocence. But plain white might also work just fine. Since white is the color of angels, Haniel thinks of choosing it. Narnia knows that nothing is impossible for her. She is confident that she can make Haniel the main character. Kama Greta's sons think Rachel is a lousy maid, and she agrees with them, asking her father for permission to make her dream come true. Rachel is convinced that she was born to be a knight, not a maid. The main character decides to introduce herself as Haniel Finesso. She never thought she would have to lie so much. Haniel cannot reveal her true identity in any case. Rachel Mays is incredibly happy to meet her. She gets to know the girl. Cam told her that she would be considered a maid, but in fact she would become an escort. At the Imperial Palace, the Emperor can personally knight Rachel. Rachel knows she simply can't pass up this opportunity. Rachel is already imagining what she will do to those who ignored her. Haniel noticed that her brothers were looking at her strangely for some reason. Their father asks if they are going to say hello. Although they feel awkward, they are still welcome. Suddenly, one of the brothers jumps up from his seat and says that he needs to go out. The second brother felt even more awkward, so he followed him. Before Haniel could say anything, the door slammed shut. The girl thought that she had already managed to do something wrong. Rachel told her that the two of them looked like fools in front of a girl in a dress. She asked the Duke if Haniel would go to the Imperial Palace on their behalf. Cam wouldn't call it a fight, But someone would become empress anyway. Haniel decides that this is a great opportunity to become Richard's wife. Rachel says that Haniel simply must become empress. She assures that they will show others who is the best here. Rachel said that Rosalina thinks she is the most beautiful. Noah can still feel his heart pounding. Noel agrees with him, not understanding who this girl is. They both decided that she was simply an angel. Now they thought they should get some fresh air. They really acted like fools. The brothers think Richard and Haniel would look great together. For the first time in hundreds of years, elections for an empress have begun. The servants of the Sapphire Castle have been working without rest in recent days. And among this chaos, there were not only servants. Cam was asked how he could follow an outdated tradition. The servant says that His Majesty will definitely not like this. The problematic process of choosing the empress, based on long-standing traditions, was also an issue. But the ministers tried not to be distracted by anything. It remains to be seen what family the empress will come from. Crusoe did a little research on the candidates. He says that Greta's family will also have a girl. Carton admitted that she would be interested to know about her. Crusoe told everything he could find out about her. But Carton tells him that he knows Duke Greta better than Crusoe. Richard asks them to stop arguing and get out of here. The sight of the empty cage takes Richard's breath away. Walking alone used to be a habit for him, but now everything has definitely changed. Now Richard doesn't want to imagine life without Phoenix. Soon the married couple of traders left. Haniel wanted to stay with them longer, but it was time for them to go. Haniel fell from the sky, but the loneliness did not go away. They looked like a harmonious family, but she felt like a nobody. Haniel doesn't know where she really belongs now. Tomorrow she will be able to officially meet Richard. Suddenly, when she waved her hand, she turned into a bird. And that means she can now fly to Richard. That night, when Richard was sleeping, he dreamed of a certain girl. Haniel remembers that she shouldn't turn into a bird for a while. She became afraid that she would not be able to turn back into a human. She cannot even imagine that she will suddenly not be able to participate in the election of the Empress. The girl promises herself that she will somehow turn back into a human. What matters more now is that she misses Richard. The window turned out to be open, and she was able to easily get inside. Haniel decides to hide her presence with divine power to avoid being caught. She noted that everything here remains as it was before, and the cage in which she lived before is open. And of course, the most beautiful face sleeping in the bed. Haniel even noticed a pillow next to the bed, as if Richard was always waiting for her. Haniel mentally apologizes to him because she wanted to return as soon as possible. She asks him to wait a little longer, and she will stand confidently in front of him. The heroine doesn't want to miss the chance to get Richard at any cost. He only has to wait 2 days and he will see her again. After that, Haniel flew back, flying out of the window. All this time, Durakun was watching her. The next day, when Richard woke up, he couldn't remember the last time he slept so well. He noticed that Phoenix had not returned today either. But he saw a feather on the pillow, sure that it had not been there yesterday. He thought that Phoenix had arrived while he was sleeping. But he doesn't understand why he, a swordmaster, didn't sense her presence. But now the only thing that matters to him is that Phoenix is alive. Richard even catches himself thinking that he misses her very much. During the walk, Rachel manages to catch Noah and Noel. She tells them in a serious tone that it is very important and urgent, so she orders them to stop talking and follow her. They asked her to at least tell them where they were going. From now on, Rachel asks them to behave like His Imperial Majesty. She asked how they would feel when they saw Haniel if they were the Emperor. Noah and Noel literally froze in place when they saw Haniel. Cam would never have thought that his sons would have such a hard time with girls. The man concluded that they were simply hopeless. They hurt Haniel by ignoring her, so she says she'll come back when she changes. Rachel, meanwhile, asks her brothers to tell her the answer. Then Noah asks Noel what he would say if he were His Majesty. Noel admitted that his heart was about to stop. Rachel thinks that even so, Haniel is missing something. She's afraid to imagine what would happen if Noah and Noel remembered Rosalind. All three of them froze in shock when Rachel mentioned Rosalind. Since Rachel is in charge of Haniel, she must not lose to Rosalind. When Haniel came out, Cam understood why Scarlet wanted to make her a candidate. Rachel ran up to the girl, saying that she really liked the outfit. Cam thinks that she and His Majesty will complement each other well. Haniel is a bright girl, but the future will depend on her actions. Cam asks them to continue the conversation, confident that they still have much to discuss. He also asks his sons to say what they could not say and want to say. By behaving like clumsy fools, they only bring shame upon themselves. An awkward silence fell. The brothers didn't know who should speak first. Rachel asks Noel what he thinks of Haniel's dress. Eventually, both brothers admitted that Haniel looked beautiful. Noel admitted that it was all about being shy. He also says that they weren't deliberately avoiding her. But Haniel, looking at them, replied that everything was fine. The goddess told her that they would be forgiven if they sincerely repented. Since they shook hands, Haniel thinks they made peace. She will not forgive this again and hopes that they will not ignore her. The Modrend family has vast lands and an abundance of resources. To achieve their goals, they use any methods and means. Rosaline asks Brother Terman if she is beautiful enough to make Richard fall in love with her. He answers for the 5th time that there is no one more beautiful than her in the country. But his answer always pleases her. Tiago and Timothy also want to tell her how beautiful she is. Timothy says that tomorrow her friend Chloe will be crying into her pillow. They think Chloe is ugly with a big nose. But Rosalind asked where she could get such a friend. She asks them to forget about her, because Chloe is not worth their conversations. If a candidate comes along that she doesn't like, she'll ask to be removed from the scene. Tomorrow, Haniel will go to the Imperial Castle, but she's already going crazy because she wants to see Richard. But the girl suddenly wondered why she was crying at all. If she wants to see him, she can simply fly to him. So Haniel turned into a bird and went to Richard. Standing on the balcony, Richard thought he saw a shooting star, but to his surprise, it turned out to be the long-awaited phoenix. The bird hit him so hard that it hurt. But even so, Richard thanks her for flying in and visiting him. The phoenix began to flap its wings and chirp, saying that it was bored. Richard invites her to look at her new cage, which was made by the wizards. But it seems that Haniel didn't like this idea very much. She couldn't afford to be caught now, even though she had worked so hard to see Richard. Phoenix apologizes for having to leave Richard and flies away. She hopes that Richard will open up to her when they reunite. The next day, Cam reports that the carriage is ready for departure. Haniel walked outside, ready to head to the palace. The palace maids haven't had much time lately. They are working tirelessly to prepare the palace for the arrival of the candidates. The preparations were completed, and the candidates began arriving at the palace one after another. In anticipation, one of the maids went into the living room. She asks the candidates to wait a little while until the representative of the Greta family arrives. The maid didn't expect them all to be wearing white dresses. Rosalind was also surprised that everyone was dressed that way. It seems they read in the newspaper that His Majesty loves simple women, but Rosalind thinks they're fools for thinking he'll fall for them. Rosalind also didn't expect her ex-friend Chloe to be here. Another girl before the election recently became the daughter of a West Pollington family. The girl from the Duke of Piraz family had never appeared in social circles before. Rosalind is confident that she has all the aces in her pocket. She doesn't understand how they came up with the idea of becoming empresses with such faces. Inika is tall and gives the impression of being a girl with a strong character. Greffany also seems to be quite mischievous. Rosalind finds it hard to stop laughing at the obviousness of the choice. She decided to ask when the representative of the Greta clan would arrive. The maid doesn't know for sure, but she replied that it will be soon. Rosalind thinks she's trying to stand out by being late. She knows that the Greta family has had bad luck since the time of the late empress. Rosalind thinks it's weird to be late when you're rushing around being empress. As a person who values her time, this causes her inconvenience. Chloe doesn't like that she's starting this circus again. She knows that Rosalind started this on purpose. She only has a pretty face, but Chloe thinks she needs to be smarter. They were soon informed that the family's candidate, Greta, had arrived. Everyone knew that this family was the last to put forward a candidate. Rosalind even became curious about what kind of person he was. But instead of Haniel, Rachel was the first to enter the room. Rosalind laughed, thinking that this was the candidate. Rachel walked in so energetically that Rosalind laughed. Rachel confirmed that she was here as an escort. Finally, Haniel enters the room, realizing that they are the last ones. Rosalind doesn't remember anyone in Greta's family looking like that. Haniel was surprised that Yanika was here, and she was just the same. Haniel hopes her goddess is doing well, telling her how she is doing, but she says she really did expect a happy future. Haniel doesn't understand what Enika is doing here. The Apollinaire Empire is represented by 5 ducal families, and among them, only one is headed by a woman, the West Pollington family. Rachel tells Haniel that they didn't have children, but they adopted a girl. Haniel knows that Yenica is pretending to be a noble lady. Yenica, in turn, does not understand why Haniel is staring at her like that. When Haniel wanted to say something, she was ordered to be quiet. Crusoe asked for calm to be maintained in the imperial palace. Due to Richard's busy schedule, it won't be possible to meet him. But starting tomorrow, each of them will be able to see him. Crusoe asks the candidates to follow him. He will show them their quarters. Haniel is confident that she will win and get Richard, no matter what. She is sure that soon they will live together as a sweet couple. Haniel's beauty initially frightened Rosalind, but she thinks that she is just a village idiot. If this continues, it will not affect the outcome. Rosalind is confident that she will take first place in the voting everywhere. She thinks the other candidates are too ugly. She just needs to meet the Emperor. Suddenly, Crusoe turned around, and Rosaline was surprised. She froze, thinking that Crusoe had fallen in love with her too. He wanted to ask something, and Rosalind was already tensing up. But he asked where the family representative Greta was doing. Rosalind and Rachel turned around to see that Haniel had disappeared. In her bird form, Haniel didn't really notice that there were pictures of her everywhere. Now, Haniel understands Richard's loneliness even more. He told how after ascending the throne, no one called him by name. Then, he told Phoenix that if she could, she should call him by his name. In fact, Haniel doesn't try to meet him before the others. This is all just because of the desire to console the Emperor. If he embodies her sincerity, his loneliness will disappear. Haniel approached him and called him by name, and he said it was tactless. Richard sees this girl for the first time, thinking that she is a candidate. He thought she had copied the image of Phoenix, but the Emperor thinks that this is not at all nice. Haniel wanted to touch him, but he abruptly pulled his hand away. He asked if no one had told her that she couldn't call the Emperor by his name. Haniel really didn't know about such a rule, but if this rule makes him feel lonely, then it can be cancelled. And the way she looks at him also provokes ethics. Richard asked Haniel if she was even listening to him. Haniel looks at him lovingly, thinking in her mind how handsome he is. Crusoe apologizes to the Emperor, saying it was his mistake. Richard assumed Crusoe had picked up one of the idiots. Crusoe doesn't understand what she did to make him angry. Crusoe asks Haniel to go with him to the appointed place, but she turned away from him, looking at Richard with resentment. Richard was surprised that she was also angry with him. Richard had already realized that the candidates would be odd. The other servants said how beautiful this candidate was. Haniel struck Richard as arrogant and ill-mannered. When he looks at her, he immediately starts to boil. The man just doesn't understand why she's so nasty. Despite the beautiful room with all the amenities, Haniel's mood is spoiled. Now she needs to understand where she went wrong. She remembers Richard himself saying that he was lonely. Haniel always considered herself kind and gentle. Such words from her loved one do not allow her to sit still. As Haniel transforms into the phoenix, she realizes that her time has come. Through the bright rays of the sun, Richard noticed the phoenix flying in. He really didn't think she would come back. As Haniel flew closer, she slapped him with her wing. But Richard only liked it, and it even embarrassed him. Haniel has had her revenge, and now she needs to move on to more serious business. She needs to find out which of the ministers is the demon. In the form of a bird, she does not feel magical energy. Haniel must use divine power. When one of the ministers turned around after hearing a rustle, Haniel hid. Now she was sure that it was him, because his energy was giving him away. Haniel is going to look at his face to remember it. But suddenly, she hears that Count Crusoe is going to bring her a book on etiquette. She understands that such sincerity will not help her. When Crusoe came to her door, he asked if she was in the room. Crusoe knows that the candidates are not allowed to wander around the palace on their own. He thought something had happened after Haniel had run away. Crusoe was about to call people, but Haniel opened the door in time. Haniel thanks him for coming personally and bringing the book. She noticed that Rosalind's family was looking at her strangely. Crusoe told the Emperor that he had spoken with Haniel and that such a thing would not happen again. The Count noticed that Richard was in some kind of high spirits today. While reading a book of etiquette, Haniel realized why one should not call the Emperor by his first name. She thinks that he lacks affection and that he has no one on his side. But Haniel understands him like no one else, and she cannot leave him. Only together can they overcome loneliness. Rachel apologized for being late because she couldn't take her eyes off the beautiful armor. But Haniel changed her clothes herself and even managed to read. Haniel had one request, and Rachel agreed without any problem. On the way, Rachel asked why Haniel was dating Enika. Haniel says they just know each other very well. Suddenly, Haniel hears someone calling her arrogant. It turned out to be the head of the Madrand family, Jaden Madrand. Rachel was about to apologize, but Haniel stopped her. Jaden asked what the girl was doing. According to etiquette, you should not greet a person of higher status first. And Haniel asked Jaden if he was of lower status than her. It's old-fashioned etiquette, but it's actually observed. But even so, Haniel will not allow herself to be stumped any longer. What Haniel told Jaden was just etiquette. Rosalind's brothers discussed how Haniel wasn't so stupid. Their older brother appeared behind them, asking them to shut up. He doesn't like that they use the Madrand name everywhere. The older brother admits that Haniel has an unpleasant look. He heard that the Greta family representative had a creepy look. The redness of her eyes seems to pierce right through. Dermond, the eldest son, realizes that he has a small business. Haniel met with Annika, asking what she was doing there. She asked Yannika if she really came here for the title. Annika said that she was here only for the emperor. She is the most beautiful of the angels who tormented Haniel. Because of the curse, angels cannot be with people, but Anik doesn't care about that. Haniel had heard something similar in general terms. Annika reminds that the curse began with silver wings, similar to Haniel's. But Haniel says this curse is meaningless. Annika asked her how she dared to show aggression, and then she asked why she had to explain it to her. Because of the rumors about the curse, everyone began to avoid Haniel. She doesn't understand why everyone is so cruel to her if she is an angel saving others. She doesn't know what she did that she has to endure all this. Annika asked loudly if she was listening to her. Haniel feels depressed because of the memories. She is terrified to imagine what will happen if she does not win Richard's love. Haniel is afraid that she might fail at everything. In heaven, the goddess asks her not to worry too much. It is important to fulfill your mission, but you cannot miss out on your happiness. Haniel asked what would happen to the mission if she didn't complete it. Everything will turn out as it should. Evil is doomed to defeat. Haniel must think about her own happiness first. So Haniel told Yannika that she didn't have to say anything. Even with this curse, she will be happy with her man. Annika asked her what she was even talking about. Annika doesn't think Haniel is right for Richard. Haniel slammed her fist into the wall in anger. She told Yannika that she didn't seem to understand the point. But Annika asked how Haniel dared to tell her the essence. Haniel reminds her that she is not an angel now. Haniel can use divine power, but Annika cannot. Annika was indignant that the girl could do this right now. All Haniel has to do is defeat the demons with her staff. This was her last warning. She asks Yanniku to leave. Now Haniel regrets that she ever feared Yanniku. She also said that she kissed Richard and even saw him naked. That's why she asks Annika not to even look at her. Annika freezes in shock, not understanding whether this is true or not. Haniel praises herself for being able to stand up to Yannika. She understands that only she is allowed to see Richard like this. Richard asks Phoenix to return to the cage and rest. Haniel was scared because she was thinking about something completely wrong. As Haniel flies away, she scolds herself for her perverted thoughts. Until now, she didn't know that this was only the beginning of the real struggle. And all this time, the bird of the Durakan Palace was watching her. Starting today, the Emperor will dine with the candidates. He wonders if at least one of them will be able to devote herself to the country. Crusoe announces that Miss Haniel of the Greta family will be the first. He recalled that this was the lady Richard had met on the court. Richard remembered that this was the one who dared to imitate Phoenix. Her behavior made Richard think she was just an idiot. But one way or another, her table manners were impeccable. They wouldn't send a candidate who didn't know the basic rules. But Richard doesn't understand how she dares to use a name intended only for his wife. There are a lot of reasons why he doesn't like Haniel. Haniel becomes embarrassed under his gaze. She needs to stay calm. She drinks juice. It turned out to be grape juice, which Richard doesn't drink. The Emperor asked her how she knew about this. Only a select few can know that Richard doesn't drink this juice. Haniel realizes she made a mistake. It was a conversation they had after their shower. Phoenix lying in his bed. Haniel says he can instantly recognize such a person by their eyes. From the look on his face, she thinks it was too much. Richard tells her that this is too ridiculous an excuse. When Haniel got up from the table, he said that this was not what he wanted. But since it's time for the meal, Haniel has to leave. She leaves without answering Richard's question. Today, everything went wrong again, not the way Haniel wanted. She finds the ribbon Rachel wore this morning. The grass looks strange, as if someone was dragged across it. Haniel thought something might have happened to Rachel. She started running around the backyard looking for Rachel. Suddenly, She heard Rosaline say that Duke Greta must be disappointed. She calls Rachel out for not having the skills to be a knight. Rosaline called Rachel a dirty country mouse who was dressed up in a dress. But Rosaline herself pushed Rachel and dragged her here by force. Rosalind asked why she addressed her informally. Smiling, she asks how she dares to speak so disrespectfully. She thinks that even after everything that happened, Rachel still doesn't understand. She told her that she would help her become even more disgusting. Haniel, watching this, realizes that they must be stopped. She sees two of Rosaline's maids pushing Rachel. Rachel fell into the fountain, but luckily the water was shallow. Now that Haniel is here, she promises that everything will be okay. Today, as always, Haniel came running to her when she was being bullied. Before Rachel could realize it, she was crying. Haniel doesn't understand how anyone could hurt someone as kind as Rachel. The heroine can't stand it when her friends are offended. As an angel, she cannot leave such an act unpunished. Handmaids must understand that by trying to harm others, they may get hurt themselves. That's why Haniel says that he will give them back everything in full. She approaches Rosaline's maids, grabbing them roughly by the arms. And after that, the girl forcefully pushes them into the fountain. Haniel then tells Rosalind that she must fall into the water too. So she grabbed her and her maid by the hand, dragging them towards the fountain. Rosalind screams in displeasure, asking the guards to do something. But they decided that they would patrol elsewhere. Haniel manages to push them all into the fountain's water. Rosalind can't believe the guards didn't protect her. Haniel reminded her that she would repay in the same coin. Rosalind looked down on other people with such disdain. If she hadn't gotten sick, Haniel would have played with her in the water too. This is the first time Haniel has directly punished a person. The guards argue that this is how the aristocrats amuse themselves. Suddenly, they hear someone's voice asking what is going on here. Haniel recognized him as the knight who always remained calm around Richard. But today, Knight Chell is extremely angry, judging by his expression. Before this, Richard asked Chad to find out everything about Haniel. Richard said that something suspicious happened at dinner, so he needed to know everything. He also asks to find out if she has other patrons. Haniel told Chad that they just loved playing in the water, so they decided to play. When Chad accidentally met Haniel at the palace, the first impression was not bad. He didn't understand how someone so beautiful could exist. He even imagined how he would feel if she smiled at him. It's hard to imagine that she could bully others. Chad was so distracted by her looks that he misjudged her character. Haniel thought that Chad was in cahoots with these people. One maid complains that Haniel threw them into the fountain. Chad says that bullying others is not allowed in the palace. Even if she is a candidate, there can be no exceptions. The maid asks Chad to look at this evil face, but Chad thinks Haniel's face looks angelic. He was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't notice how Haniel pushed him into the water. The knight didn't even understand what happened and how he ended up in the water. This is the first time something like this has happened to Chad, which shocks him. Haniel was asked what she was doing, thinking she had gone crazy. Haniel told Chad that if he hurt Rachel, she would give it back to him double. She doesn't like that these insignificant people dare to be arrogant. She told Chad that if it happened again, she wouldn't let it go. She asks the knight to approach his friends and make them apologize. Chad doesn't understand what he did wrong, and Haniel told him that he pushed Rachel into the water. Chad apologizes to her, saying that he got it all wrong. However, he says he never offended the young lady. Haniel pushed Rachel's idol into the water, and she thinks he will hate her. These thoughts even made Rachel faint. Chad swears he's seeing Rachel for the first time, and that she probably didn't faint because of him. But Haniel is an angel, and she couldn't help but notice the deception. Realizing that Haniel was wrong, she apologizes to Chad. The girl says that she will jump into the water too, and asks Chad to push her. Chad declined, appearing magnanimous in Haniel's eyes. Picking Rachel up in her arms, the heroine is about to leave. Chad doesn't understand how she did it so easily. Neither her speed nor her strength are equal. But to be fair, Haniel decides to jump into the water. For now, Chad decides to watch her a little longer. Soon Rachel wakes up from a nightmare. Only then does she realize that she is in a room. Rachel began to tell that she had a terrible dream. But in that moment, she realized that it was all reality. Haniel told her that she had told them all off. Sir Chad said he never hurt Rachel. You shouldn't do this to someone who enjoys the Emperor's trust. Rachel is afraid that Duke Greta might get hurt because of all this. But Haniel reassures her that the family she knows is quite distinguished. Therefore, they will not suffer because of such a trifle. People from Greta's family don't want to see Rachel hiding. Duke Greta has been looking at Rachel with trepidation all this time. So Haniel told her that she had done nothing wrong. Rachel is surprised that a person can be so strong and beautiful. Rachel asks her to promise to be careful with Rosaline. If she wants something, she will do anything to get it. Rachel doesn't know what Rosalind can do to get rid of Haniel, but Haniel tells her not to worry, saying that she is stronger than Rachel thinks. Meanwhile, Rosaline had completely trashed her room. Her brother Timothy asks what happened that makes her so angry. Rosalind asks him to do something about Haniel because she was humiliated by her. Timothy gets annoyed that Rosalind yells at him so much. He asks her to explain everything from the very beginning so as not to go crazy. He reminds her that she trusts her older brother more, even though Timothy helped her much more. Rosalind began to tell how Haniel pushed her into the fountain. She thinks it's worth filing an official complaint against the Greta family. Timothy thinks she's making up a bunch of excuses to keep her rivals out. He says that his father is not in the best position now. If you want to hire a mage, even one that's not very powerful, you'll have to invest a lot of money. Due to a subordinate's mistake, their father found himself in a difficult situation. Duke Greta, given the right to investigate, turns their home upside down. Rosalind realizes that this will make her look bad. But Timothy has no choice. He will have to help his sister. Still, she acts like she's doing him a favor by accepting his care. Timothy suggests making it look like the most serious crime in the country. Problems have begun, and now there are also candidates nominated by both dukes. Crusoe does not believe that the Emperor is interested in Haniel Greta. He thinks that this is all just complete nonsense. He is sure that Richard would never have given the Duke of Greta the right to investigate. In the end, His Majesty rejected all the ladies. The only one he reacts to at all is Haniel. Phoenix could improve His Majesty's mood. A few days later, Haniel is feeding the animals in the garden. Rachel noted that the girl gets along well with animals. Haniel said animals have been drawn to her since she was a child. The peaceful days continue. Even Rosalind's gang has become quiet. Rachel asked why Haniel didn't give food to one of the pigeons. It seems like this guy refuses to go to heaven. Haniel had to say that she just didn't like pigeons. She noticed that Rachel was in a hurry. The girl said it wasn't true, but it was written all over her face. Haniel allowed her to go and have a look while she was at the residence. Finally, the heroine had time to be alone. Finding that demon minister turned out to be much more difficult, and lately Rachel hasn't left her side for a moment. And now that Rachel is gone, this is Haniel's chance. The maid who had been watching Haniel came to give information to Rosalind. As Rosalind expected, all the animals are drawn to Haniel. The maid found it strange that all the animals were so kind to her. Rosalind can't wait to see the look on Haniel's face when her plan comes to fruition. She orders the maid to go and steal one of her personal belongings. This will be useful to her for one project that she has started. Since ancient times, animals have been valued in the Apollinaire Empire. Cruelty to animals was considered murder. Rosalind wants Haniel to be caught mistreating animals. They will lure them with stolen clothes, beat them, and then accuse them. If everything goes smoothly, they will be able to get rid of the Greta family. Soon Phoenix flew back to the palace to see Richard. A smile instantly blossomed on his face at the sight of her. But to his surprise, the bird landed in Catherine's hands. For now, Phoenix doesn't even want to look him in the eye. It's because every time she gets angry when she thinks about that day. Richard asks her if she knows how many times he asked her to shovel snow. Haniel pretends not to know, although she is perfectly aware of it. Then Richard asked her if she really wanted to become empress. Haniel said she wanted to, because she would be His Majesty's partner. And since she likes His Majesty, she wants to be his partner. Richard doesn't understand when she managed to fall in love with him, because they didn't see each other that much. It's not that he doesn't believe in love at first sight, but he says it won't happen. She asked why, and he replied that she was not his type. Richard only thinks she's beautiful when she's a bird. Haniel is already annoyed that she can't find the demons. From then on, Rachel began to go out at about the same time. At the same time, Haniel was looking for demons, but it seemed like a failure. Phoenix has to leave His Majesty for a while. Haniel says that she met a cute sparrow today. At the moment of their conversation, the heroine smelled blood. She rushed forward, trying to find where the smell was coming from. Suddenly, someone claims that Haniel is abusing animals. Rachel is almost furious, but Haniel asks her to help her. The cat looks weak, but Haniel doesn't know how to help him. It would require a lot of divine power, which Haniel cannot use in front of people. They can catch that person later, but now they need to save the animal. First, they best stop the bleeding. People began to discuss who dared to do this. Soon, a sorceress who heals arrived here. The wounds are not very serious, so they can be treated. The wound does not resemble one that could have been inflicted by other animals. The magician asks if the candidate really did this. Rachel replies that they were just trying to make it bleed. Rosalind and Timothy realize that everything is going according to their plan. Earlier, Timothy asked the maid if she had brought the stolen clothes. He said that she should attract animals with these clothes. During this time, he will harm the animals. And then, when they are discovered, the maid must scream. Since this is a serious matter, His Majesty will definitely appear. Haniel is sure that this is all the work of Rosalind and Timothy. She sees how they dare to smile in such a situation, all because they are the real instigators of this horror. Haniel's instincts scream at her that they are to blame. Hearing of the monstrous crime, the Emperor soon arrived. Haniel, as the main suspect, will have to submit to the investigation. When the girl looked up at Richard, she saw an angry expression on his face. Richard says he was told that Haniel had committed a terrible crime. This is not something that can be ignored, so a thorough investigation will be carried out. But Haniel honestly replies that she did not harm this animal. She tells how she and Rachel were returning from a walk and smelled blood. But the maid tells how she saw with her own eyes that she was the cause of harm to the animal. She says that after this, Haniel ordered her to bury the animal in the backyard. She has to lie that she, working as a servant in this palace, saw how they did it. The maid mentally apologizes because she has no choice. Rachel shouts in displeasure that nothing of the sort happened. She also said that she and Haniel were on a walk. Haniel hears a different voice in the maid. Realizing that she is lying, she guesses that Rosalind bribed her. The maid said that they had to change their clothes because they were covered in blood. She is more than sure that they will find clothes in their room. Richard orders Crusoe to inspect Haniel's room. Soon they brought the clothes that were hidden in the candidates' chambers. Everyone started whispering about how to explain this now. If Richard doesn't hear a convincing explanation, he will send Haniel to prison. At this moment, Timothy appears, who also has something to say. Richard asks him what he is doing here. Timothy asks to tell Rosalind what else Haniel has done. She began to tell how Haniel pushed her into the water. She pretends to cry, saying that they were just drinking tea in the garden. Rosaline then says that she pushed Sir Chad too. She exaggerates everything as if she had just swum in the sea. Now the head of their family appears, who can no longer listen to this. The zeal with which the Maudrand family is interfering in this matter is suspicious. The head of the family began to list how they first persecuted the candidates, then harmed the animal. He asks what the head of the Greta family was thinking when he sent such a cruel man here. He approaches Camus Greta, asking him to say at least something. They never gave Haniel a chance to get a word in edgewise. All they do is blame her for all the troubles. Haniel tells Rachel not to worry, promising that they will figure it out now. Suddenly, the wounded cat opens its eyes, attracting attention. Suddenly, he stood up on his paws and walked towards Haniel. She picked him up, asking if he was okay. The guests are indignant that the cat approached his offender so calmly. Richard knows that an animal would never approach a bad person. Now he asks the maid again if she really saw it with her own eyes. Rachel added that the clothes were passed on to another maid for washing. Everyone started whispering about why they were doing such things at all. Eventually, Richard decides that he needs to interrogate the maid. He then asks Count Crusoe to take the maid to the dungeon. Now Richard says they need to discuss the other issues mentioned. He asks that Sir Chad be brought here so that he can give his testimony. Soon, as Richard had requested, Sir Chad arrived. Richard asks him if it's true that Haniel pushed him into the water. Such an act is unforgivable, so Chad must tell the truth. Since that day, Chad can't stop thinking about Haniel. He, like Richard, also wants to find his love. But, unfortunately, he doesn't have time for dating, and no one has ever managed to conquer him at first sight. At first he thought it was love, but then he realized it was guilt. Chad says nothing of the sort happened, and the candidates were simply talking. Rosalind didn't expect Chad to side with Haniel and lie. Chad said that he accidentally tripped and fell. In other words, Haniel has nothing to do with it, as Chad says. Richard asks how a mere woman can knock down a trained knight. Haniel pretends to cry, saying that she is truly not capable of such a thing. She assumed that her sudden arrival had frightened everyone, and they had lost their balance. Actually, Richard likes this version better. He thinks that Rosalind should practice a little so that she doesn't fall so easily. Since they've decided everything, Richard suggests they leave it at that. He asks the ministers to come with him to the council chamber. At that moment, Haniel clearly felt demonic energy. This man had been in the palace all this time, but Haniel had not been able to recognize him before. He must have been trying to keep a low profile, and now Haniel needs to remember him. Cam invites Haniel to rest, promising to contact her after the meeting. Rosalind and Timothy's plan failed, which they did not expect. She told her brother that if he had done everything right in the first place, they would not have had to embarrass themselves. Rosalind feels like a fool for deciding to trust him. She acts so arrogantly, as if she had become an empress. Richard doesn't think Haniel did those terrible things. Haniel doesn't care about other people's opinions. She felt embarrassed by the way Richard spoke to her kindly. Suddenly, she heard someone entering the room. It turned out to be Yanika, who needed to tell her something. She asked Haniel how long she would stare at her. Haniel agrees with her and asks who did it. Enika didn't expect that Haniel already knew that she had turned into a dove. Since Enika had a lot of free time these days, she was able to keep an eye on everyone. Haniel is sure that Enika definitely saw who did it, so she asks again who did this to her friends. Enika admits that she doesn't know his name, but says that he was a guy with red hair. She clarifies that he was standing next to Rosalind earlier. Now Haniel had no more doubts. Enika was overcome with fear at that moment, so she could not do anything. She may be an angel, but in this situation, there was nothing else to do. Since she was not summoned here, she cannot use her powers. Yanika apologizes to Haniel, realizing that in her eyes she looked no better. It's too late to say it, but she really is sorry. It's impossible to forget the past, but Haniel feels much better. She hopes that the maid will also apologize to her. Among those people, she recognizes a guy with red hair. Haniel realizes that he was in the palace all this time, but now the time has come to pay for your sins. Timothy is surprised that money even opened the way for him to prison. He quickly plans to get rid of the maid and disappear, but to his surprise, she was already dead. Timothy brought his poison in vain, but he thanks the maid for dying on her own. Suddenly, someone says that she won't even have to waste time on him. Haniel said that if you sin before an angel, your nose will be cut off and your tongue will be torn out. Timothy, noticing the girl, felt a bad feeling. Using magic, Haniel pulled his hood off. Timothy suddenly becomes small, like a finger. He looked up and saw himself, only in normal size. Big Timothy grabs him, even though he begs him not to. Haniel hopes that by living through this illusion, he will realize the full horror of his actions. She regrets having to waste her time on someone like him. Now she needs to find that minister with demonic energy. The heroine is sure that he must still be in the palace. Richard, standing on the balcony, noticed Haniel on the street. He decided that there were rats in their palace. The demonic energy belongs to one of the ministers. Haniel had trouble finding him because he rarely appeared in the palace. Rachel said their meeting was delayed. Some ministers stayed overnight in the palace. Suddenly, she heard some rustling behind her. Realizing that someone was there, she started to run. Haniel thought no one was watching her, but she was wrong. As a result, the girl decided to hide in the bushes. Richard saw her, so he followed her. But when he approached the bushes, all that was left of Haniel was her robe. She managed to turn into a bird and hide in a tree. Haniel didn't expect Richard to be so skilled, but she knows that her husband should be at this level anyway. She remembered the demon's face, so she would definitely catch him next time. The next day, everyone is discussing the murder of the maid. They also heard that Timothy Modrend was lying in front of her cell. Richard looks at him, realizing that he is simply not himself. He asks to send Timothy home and leave it at that. But the head of the Modrend family does not agree with this. Richard tells him that he is already scared, and there is no point in spreading rumors. It would be better if all this happened quietly. The head of the family realized that the emperor suspected his family of yesterday's incident. Society is already negatively disposed towards them, and they may fall to the bottom. In this situation, he has no choice. He must obey His Majesty. Timothy has already complicated everything, so there is no other way. The father throws his son out of the carriage, calling him useless. The mother runs up to her son and asks if everything is okay. The head of the family doesn't even want to see this idiot and asks to take him away. He is angry that his son, through his stupidity, has ruined his reputation. So he tells his eldest son that from now on he will help Rosalind. Tiago asks if they really don't care what happened to Timothy, but the older brother asks him to be grateful that he brought Timothy back at all. He says that Timothy is in their way, and that both of them are only bringing shame on their family. Tiago promises his mother to take revenge on them for Tamati. He vows to find those who did this and kill them with his own hands. Meanwhile, Haniel followed the emperor, who was going somewhere. Richard asked her why she kept following him, but Haniel said that by a lucky chance she was going where he was going. But Richard had seen that she had gone the other way before. Haniel wanted to thank him for being the only one who stood up for her honor yesterday. If she doesn't say it now, the next opportunity will come only at the reception. Chad said that Rosalind lied about Haniel pushing her into the water. Then Richard replied that he already knew about it. One Knight watched from afar and saw that it was a young woman who did it. The Emperor's guards are full of weaklings who are incapable of resisting a woman. Richard thinks that Haniel simply charmed Chad with her beauty. Richard is going to take care of Haniel himself. He believes that the Emperor himself should decide such serious matters. Despite being interrupted yesterday, Haniel expressed her thoughts well. Although she likes to annoy Richard, she has many good sides. Haniel suddenly noticed that Richard smiled and thought it was because of her. But the Emperor asked what nonsense she was talking about, and in general, it's time for her to go her own way. Richard must not let his guard down, because he still doesn't know Haniel very well. He can't allow himself to fall in love with her. Then we are shown a man entering a cave in heavy snowfall. He accidentally trips and falls, but at that very moment, he finds what he needed. He understands that this will help no one but him. Haniel failed last time, but now she is confident that she will succeed. The damage caused by demons is becoming more and more serious. More and more people are experiencing difficulties in their lives due to demons. Now it became easier for Haniel to distinguish between demons. However, the damage they cause also increases along with them. It would be good to find that demon that Haniel found last time. She suddenly noticed him as he entered the corridor. But for some reason now, there is no demonic aura emanating from him. Either way, Haniel decides to follow him anyway. He knows the castle well, judging by the fact that he goes where there are no guards. And suddenly, the minister approaches some closed door. Once inside, Haniel turns into a human. She looks inside, trying to figure out what he's looking for. It doesn't look like anything important would be kept in such a place. But at one moment, she felt demonic energy. She can't attack him now because others will hear and come here. Therefore, the main character decides to wait a little longer. It won't be too late to catch him when it becomes clear what he's doing. Suddenly, she feels someone cover her mouth with their hand. She looked up and was surprised to see His Highness. Richard whispers to her who she is. She asks him to shut up and puts her finger to his mouth. It's bad that he's here because with him, Haniel can't use his power. She realizes that it looks like she'll have to wait until next time. In this situation, she does not feel that Richard can harm her. Hearing the minister's voice, she hopes that he won't come out here now. To avoid being noticed, Haniel pushed Richard against the wall and stood closer to him. They both look inside to see what the man found. In the language of demons, he says that he needs to disappear. Haniel can't let this happen. She needs to stop him. But the minister had already turned to dust and disappeared. His soul perished, and only some black fragment remained. It's good that Richard came here with his subordinates. The Emperor decides to ask Haniel if she is also a demon. At first she said yes, but then she misspoke and replied no. Then Richard asks what she is doing here at such a time. She lies that she wanted to ask that man for directions because she was lost. It will be the end of her if Richard doesn't believe this version. They already suspected that the man was a demon, so they increased surveillance on him. And Richard says that no one will believe Haniel's excuse. After this, the Emperor asks the guards to take her away. In addition to this, he also asks that security be assigned to her. Haniel doesn't understand why she always gets herself into such ridiculous situations. She would like to escape from here, but she can't. Richard asks Bien if she brought the necessary potions. Haniel, looking at the bottles, does not understand anything. She thought they wanted to kill the witness. Under the influence of these potions, people cannot lie. Secondly, it will help to find out whether Haniel is a demon or not. But potions created by people do not work on angels. Haniel asked if they would let her go if she drank the potion. Richard said that everything would depend on her answers. Haniel doesn't want to lie, but she has to play her part. Richard realized that he had been looking at her too much. Haniel noticed him turn away abruptly, not understanding why. The fact that Haniel is not a demon already makes Richard happy. After she drinks the second potion, Richard asks what she was doing there. Haniel said the same thing, adding that she wanted to observe that man. Richard asked if she knew Baron Sven. Haniel can't answer calmly because he's staring at her. Richard started asking her a bunch of questions, starting with the banal name. And now he asks why she touched his lips earlier. Haniel realizes that he doesn't believe her words, so she replies that it's all because she likes Richard. Moreover, this is not the first time she has spoken about this. Haniel wants to marry him and have children as soon as possible. She fell in love with Richard at first sight. Richard may not be afraid of demons because she fights well. The girl asked His Majesty if he was listening to her. Richard understands that these are no longer just simple statements. The Emperor thinks that these are all threats and manipulations. Days later, he's still thinking about it. The potion was fine, which meant Haniel had told him the truth. The thought of this simply drives His Majesty crazy. For some reason, Richard can't stop thinking about it. The maid Cartine met with the head maid Katerina. She said that she was assigned to Haniel's chambers. Katerina asks Catherine to report on her appointment. Carton doesn't understand why the head maid was sent here. Before this moment, Richard had met with Katerina. He has a task for her to keep an eye on Haniel. Since the maid passed away, her place became vacant. From the outside, this may look like a demotion, but Katerina must understand that her mission is not limited to this. Katerina promises the Emperor that she will look at every corner of her room. If she finds out anything, she will tell him immediately. After a while, Haniel realized that everyone was following in her footsteps. This will make it more difficult for her to find the demon. She doesn't understand why the previous demon committed suicide. Things only get more confusing for the main character. Crusoe, having met the Emperor, noticed that he was not feeling well. Richard recalls having nightmares last night, and in these nightmares, he tried to escape from Haniel. And when he wakes up, he doesn't even remember what the dream was about. Crusoe says that Shinjo's disappearance has delayed the demon hunting tournament, so Crusoe suggests shortening it a little. The annual tournament is held to protect people from monsters. They cannot afford to let this event go unnoticed. This year, Richard orders more knights to be sent into the forest. In addition, this year the security of female candidates needs to be strengthened. Crusoe wanted to remind him about dinner, but Richard asked him to cancel it. He makes excuses that he is not feeling well, so there will be no meeting. Rosalind heard rumors that Richard had canceled his lunch with the candidate. Her older brother confirms this, saying that his sources can be trusted. Rosalind is glad that the Emperor has finally come to his senses. She asks her brother about the medicine he was talking about. He warns that the smell alone can drive wild animals crazy. Rosalind tells him not to worry because she has thought of everything. She initially thought of using the drug on dogs, but for now, she needs to decide who is best to control in the hunting grounds. Rosalind asks her brother if he will help. He replied that he would help until she became Empress. Time passed inexorably, and someone dreamed of revenge, and someone dreamed of love. So soon the hunting tournament began. Rachel promises Haniel that she will take first place. In fact, the girl is a little worried about Rachel. There may be demons lurking among the nobles accompanying Richard. Haniel doesn't know how to get closer to him. She bumped into Rosalind by chance, and Rosalind apologized, pretending not to notice her. Rosalind knows that Haniel is next after Chloe. Crusoe asks the candidates to come forward for instructions. He explains that the hunting grounds are divided into 3 zones. These 3 zones are intended for different statuses of people. It is important for the future Empress to show courage in battle. As soon as they are ready, they can begin. Past Empresses have always demonstrated success. But what worries Rosalind most is that woman, Grafani Peer. The other 2 were brought in by dukes from abroad, so it is not surprising that their past is unknown. Rosalind can't let Grafani lose the tournament. She hopes that Grafani will fall off her horse and break her neck. Soon Haniel and Rachel parted ways, and she was free again. The knights warn her not to go too far. The thicket is the safest place. Haniel understands their concerns, but she doesn't need them. She leaves and they ask to call other knights. Haniel has been under surveillance since the tournament began. She needs to catch them quickly and get back to Richard. Suddenly, the girl noticed a monster among the bushes. She is surprised that he is not attacking her now. It appears her pursuers are keeping their distance. Haniel will pretend to distract the monster so as not to arouse suspicion. They could have planned the attack after the battle with the monster. She had to stop abruptly when a swamp appeared ahead. Haniel guesses that she was lured here on purpose. Rosalind's brother Tiago emerged from behind the bushes. He told Haniel that her brother would hurt his brother. Haniel thought it was his twin brother Tamati. Tiago told her that the same fate would befall her. He wants to kill her, tear her into pieces, and feed her to the monsters. If Haniel provokes Tiago, the situation will get out of control. So she decides to get rid of the monster and leave. The monster rushes straight at her, and Haniel begins to attack. After all, this is her specialty. She gets the hang of it quickly. Tiago doesn't believe that she defeated the monster with one blow of her bow. Haniel jumps on his horse and rides away. As much as she wanted to put everyone to bed, she had to get back to Richard. Suddenly, she saw Durakan flying overhead. The bird flaps its wings, indicating which direction it needs to go. Haniel smiled, thanking him for his support. She promises to repay him for his kindness later. Tiago is angry, certain that the most painful death awaits her. He had the feeling that he was standing still. And in fact, Tiago didn't move a single step away from the swamp. The assistant reported that there was a monster with an ability behind them. This monster controls the mind and has a high rank. Tiago asks them to calm down, assuring them that it is a low-ranking monster. He noticed the Emperor's bird flying towards him. Durahan digs his claws into his forehead and pushes Tiago into the swamp. Tiago, starting to drown, cannot believe that he will die like this. The assistants rushed to run when they saw that Tiago had fallen into the swamp. Meanwhile, Richard asks if there is any news from other zones. Suddenly, Haniel came galloping up to the ground nearby. Richard, perplexed, asks her what she is doing here. She said that she had lost her horse and was lost. She asks to be allowed to stay, as she has already gone too far. Haniel asked the Emperor who would protect him then. In the end, he let her stay. The knights wondered why they were here at all. So far, everything is going smoothly, and Haniel hopes it will stay that way. But not everything always goes as you want. There was an attempt on Richard's life. They noticed the attack. But it was Haniel who first prevented it. After protecting Richard from the attack, she asked if he was okay. Suddenly, Richard felt his heart beat faster. Haniel asks him if he is hurt. Her breathing reminds Richard of that very day when they watched the demon. Richard had already decided that he would only touch his future wife, and he still stuck to his position. He asked her what was going on and why Haniel had jumped in front of the arrow. Richard asks in horror what would have happened if the arrow had hit her. Haniel was glad that the Emperor was worried about her, but the man completely denies this, saying that he doesn't care. The main character was surprised that he was so angry, but she is sure that Richard was definitely worried about her. He seemed to look at her with more respect now. Of course, this fact simply could not help but make her happy. That evening, Rachel still regretted not having won first place, but Cam reassured her that she had shown her true abilities. Haniel asks if the food at the hunting tournament is always this good. Rachel thinks it's all in honor of the upcoming New Year's Eve ball. Haniel concluded that she would also eat her fill at the New Year's ball. She suddenly noticed one aristocrat standing to the side. Everyone gathered at the place, and he alone went somewhere. Haniel leaves urgently under the pretext that she needs to go to the toilet. So she found herself deep in the forest, watching the minister. She noticed a knight she didn't know with him. Haniel managed to recognize that they were speaking the language of demons. The demons disappeared after the war, but their descendants, the Maquis, remained. And now Haniel finds such people who speak the language of demons. Since they're just poppies, she decides to deal with them now. But before she can do anything, she is distracted by the arrival of Durakan. She began to justify herself to him as to why she had a stick in her hands. But she had no time to talk, so she decided to do it later. But when Haniel turned around, those two were no longer there. Besides that, Durakan also disappeared immediately, before she could even blink. The preparations are almost complete. All that remains is to wait for the right moment. This minister noticed the Emperor's bird. It turns out that Durahan is on the side of the demons and has been helping them for a long time. First, this bird brought the black fragment to the minister. Then she also brought him the Holy Scripture. Their plan to awaken someone began precisely through writing. There is no way back, and nothing can stop them now. Haniel found the last healing root she needed. She turned around and noticed the sky suddenly becoming darker. Things got so bad that she had to flee the forest. On the way, she accidentally tripped over a tree root and fell. But suddenly, the heroine opens her eyes sharply, breathing heavily. She had a nightmare, but she doesn't remember it at all. We haven't really decided anything yet, but we're already having disturbing dreams. She still has the unresolved matter of Rosalind. On the last day of the hunting tournament, Chloe suffered a serious injury. The calm horse suddenly went crazy. No one could calm it down. And, coincidence or not, Chloe was then attacked by a bear. The horse could not have changed so easily, just as a bear could not have appeared there. After investigation, It was discovered that the food of these animals contained narcotic substances. Chloe was rushed to the estate for treatment, and Rosalind watched all this from the side with a smile. Chloe isn't the nicest person, but she doesn't deserve this. With Chloe, it's different. Haniel can't just fix the problem. It is unknown what other atrocities she suspected. At times like these, it's important to set your priorities straight. Haniel knows that punishing people is not that difficult. First, she investigates a family belonging to the Maquis. The main character had already seen that man somewhere. He examined her when she was in the form of a bird. He seems to suspect her true nature. Greffany Pierre, according to Haniel, is also a Maquis. In the morning, she discovered that someone had put poison in her tea. She didn't even have to guess who it was, because the culprit was obvious. Those who hurt others must understand that everything will come back to them. The maid noted that Rosalind looked pleased today. Rosalind replied that so far everything was going as it should. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her stomach. Her stomach started hurting immediately after drinking the tea. From such a quick action, she understands that it is poison. Rosalind felt like she had dealt with Chloe too quickly. She thinks that Chloe was up to something and switched the cups. Rosalind can't give up that easily. She needs to meet someone. This is the man who came to her immediately after the end of the tournament. Rosalind's older brother is looking for the missing Tiago, but there is no news yet. Meanwhile, Rosalind had already received the medicines she had been collecting at home. She finally wants to put an end to Haniel and Greffany. She noticed a note on the table next to the medicines. The man left her a note and hinted to start with Haniel. But Rosalind doesn't know how to meet him. She must not act rashly and must listen to him. It's hard to think now because her stomach hurts again. First, she decides to go to the toilet, and only then think. Crusoe relays news that something has happened at Rosaline's house. She says there is something wrong with the tea, but none of the servants could have put anything in it. Richard asks him to leave if he has no more news. But Crusoe was just about to change the subject. Talking about the new year, Crusoe insists that it is time for Richard to prepare for the New Year's ball. He casually reminds Richard that he should be with his companion. But after thinking about it, the Emperor decided that he would choose Haniel. Crusoe noticed his face flush slightly. Richard asks him not to think anything of it and to stop staring. It's too hot in the office. Richard decides to get some fresh air. Haniel flew around almost the entire palace, but did not notice any bad energy. Suddenly, she saw Yaniku sitting in the yard. She tells her that she was flying past and asked what happened. Enika replied that she would leave the palace, since the Emperor was not interested in her anyway. She reflects that she will most likely go on a trip. But suddenly, Haniel tells her that she has a request. She asks her to return to the Heavenly Kingdom and meet with Teacher Yuri. Haniel wants to warn him that her divine power is running out. Enika was surprised, asking what she was doing here then. But Yanika knows that Haniel cannot leave his post. She decides that she will go to the Heavenly Kingdom right now. Turning into a dove, she warns that Haniel will be in her debt. And suddenly, the girl hears a familiar voice behind her. She turned around and saw Richard, not expecting him to be there. The Emperor tells her that he would like to say something. Haniel could only hope he didn't see anything. He came closer to her, and Haniel felt a strange atmosphere. Richard asks her if she could go with him to the New Year's Eve ball. The Emperor simply thinks that Haniel loves him very much. He began to justify himself by saying that her feelings touched him, so he couldn't resist. This made her laugh, and he asked what was wrong. But the thing is, Haniel is just happy. Of course, she agrees to go to the ball with Richard. He became embarrassed and said that it was time for him to go. But before she left, Haniel wished him good night. Still, he smiled back at her, unable to resist. Haniel feels that Richard is starting to trust her. Yenneck, who was sitting behind them, noted that everything was fine with them. Haniel asked her if she understood what would happen if Richard saw her. Enika was frightened by her reaction and immediately apologized. She asks to be taken to her room, as she herself cannot move due to shock. Now, Haniel will also begin preparing for the New Year's ball. Soon, Termin came to report the results of the examination. Their mother sincerely hopes that they have finally found Tiago. She asks Termin to tell her quickly, otherwise she will go crazy. But he just pushed her aside and went to his father. Truman suggests that Tiago went to a dark guild and failed. Moreover, he thinks that Tiago has already left the country. Father, as he thought before, considers Tiago a useless puppy. Termin reminds that there was only one person with silver hair in the palace. It is impossible for an ordinary woman to get out of all this. He suggests to his father to frame Hanyul at the night ball, making her look like a rebel. Turman says he is ready to take care of this personally. In the end, Hanyul couldn't help herself and flew to Richard. She remembers his words that he was touched by her feelings. Hanyul just melts at how cute he is, but there was no one in the room, so she assumed he was in the office. At that moment, Durakan lands next to her. She tells him that he scared the hell out of her. She is surprised when Durakan says that there is almost no time left. He also said that the seal would soon be removed. After this, Durakan flew away without explaining anything. Hanyul has no idea what his words meant. She thinks she should have taken a little more physical training lessons. Hanyul decided to ask Yenica so as not to waste time. She said she was too shocked to move, so Hanyul flew to her. But as she flew down the corridor, she felt demonic energy. This magic comes from Grafani's room. Hanyul overhears someone say that the Emperor is interested in another candidate. Grafani said she knew who it might be. She asked the man who would go to the ball if he was responsible for the guys from the port. The man replied, regarding them, that the meeting was still ongoing. He warns against doing anything frivolous. Grafani's dream is to give her life for the life of someone else. Hanyul realized that they were planning something for the New Year's Eve ball. When they get the 10th fragment, their memory will begin to recover. The man suddenly felt that there was a rat in the palace. Grafani came over to check, asking if he had seen anyone. They haven't found anyone, and they'll have to focus on their plan anyway. Hanyul barely escaped. She almost got caught. If she hadn't managed to hide her presence, she would have been caught. First, she needs to understand what they were talking about. They wouldn't just time it to pick up the fragment. Looks like they're not the only demons here. Hanyul wondered if the man had any connection to the seal that Durakan had mentioned. Hanyul doesn't understand anything, and she still hasn't been able to go to Yenica. But be that as it may, she needs to stop them at any cost. She doesn't know how long her strength will last, but she has no choice. She will catch them at any cost, even if she has to use her strength. There's still a lot of time before the New Year's ball. We need to come up with a plan. Crusoe asks the Emperor how long he will continue to preen himself. Richard asks him if he looks okay, but Crusoe throws him out into the corridor because Hanyul is already waiting. Richard is sure that today should be a perfect day. When Richard goes out, he bumps into Hanyul. She said that he had been gone for a long time, so she came. Richard is embarrassed, finding her too cute. He stuttered and apologized for keeping her waiting. But Hanyul says that everything is okay, because now they are together. The girl asks His Majesty to take care of her today. The guests at the ball began to discuss that the Emperor would come with a lady from the Greta family. The father of the family, Modrend, is indignant, not understanding what Richard is thinking. Choosing a companion from among the candidates is like choosing an empress. Soon it was announced that His Majesty the Emperor was entering. Rosalind doesn't understand why he chose Hanyul out of all people, but she is not going to give up. Confident that this place will be hers, she also wondered how Hanyul managed to seduce such a cold emperor. After the last incident, Rosalind continued to drug Hanyul. It remains a mystery to her what trick this girl used. Turman asks her to calm down and try not to express emotions. He asks her to wait because he has a plan. He promises her that this is the first and last time Rosaline sees them together. Rosalind agrees, confident that he has no equal in this. After this, she leaves, wishing her brother a good holiday. Hanyul knows that the Modrend family drugged her, and today she hopes that they won't cause any problems. The mere thought of capturing Duke Pier makes her head explode. But today, she needs to focus on the demon. Suddenly, Richard took Hanyul's hand. He modestly told her that he would like to dance with her. Hanyul almost squealed at how cute he was. The Emperor asks her not to worry, promising to adapt to her. Richard wants Hanyul to just follow him. The guests began to discuss how cute they looked together. Besides this, each of them likes Hanyul's hair color. Richard only needs to look at Hanyul once to make his heart beat faster. He thought about wanting to hug her. Hanyul is the only one Richard would like to spend his whole life with. Just as he was about to ask her something, Crusoe distracted them. The Count immediately realized that he had come at the wrong time. Richard told the girl that he would be back soon. He whispered to her not to think about dancing with other men. Hanyul laughed, asking him to come back faster. While he is away, she decides that it is worth keeping an eye on Duke Pier. At that moment, a man approached her. He introduces himself as Jester, telling where he studied. The heroine doesn't quite understand why she needs this information. Jester heard that Hanyul is from the Beryl region. She doesn't have time to answer anything before he starts bombarding her with questions. Some of the guests who are from Beryl have never heard the name Haniel. Haniel realizes that she is backed into a dead end. Just like last time, she guessed who was the instigator of this. It turned out to be Termin Madrand, who asks her to confirm her identity. Since the twins' hands are tied, the older one has to act. Suddenly, the former emperor and empress appeared here. Scarlet says she can vouch for Haniel. Haniel also doesn't understand how they ended up here. Imagine her surprise when she heard that they were the former emperor and empress. To her, they had always been just an ordinary couple of traitors. Termin wondered why Scarlet was standing up for Haniel. She asked if he would take responsibility for this commotion. Haniel has to lie that she is a magical swordsman from the West. Of course, her conscience torments her. But the goddess said that sometimes it is better to lie. She remembers telling Scarlet that she was from Sylvania. But now she said something completely different, which has driven herself into a dead end. The Empress states that Haniel is not a distant relative of Gret. Haniel tries to stop her before it's too late. But Scarlet said that she was the princess of the kingdom of Sylvania. Of course, everyone found it hard to believe. Before, Haniel was simply trying to shift suspicion away from herself. But a girl from Sylvania appeared and declared that they only had a 2-year-old princess. She says that Haniel is deceiving the former empress. Scarlet, of course, asks what this means. Haniel apologizes for lying. Scarlet asks in disbelief how she could lie to them. But she remembers that Haniel never told her that she was a princess, so she decided that it was her fault, that she had misunderstood everything. But now she asks Haniel again where she really comes from. Termin says she's been deceiving them all this time, but Scarlet believes in her sincerity, so she asks her to answer honestly. Haniel doesn't understand what they all want from her. If she has nothing to say, it means she has something to hide. Termin claims that Haniel is a rebel, and he has proof. If she is caught, she will not be able to pursue Duke Pyr. Haniel suddenly noticed Duke Pyra leaving the hall. If she leaves now, she will hardly be able to come back. But she decided that she had to put her mission first. Haniel promises Richard to come back and explain everything. She barely managed to jump into his carriage, and they found themselves on the pier. The man asks if the goods are okay, and is told that the deal is complete. After this, some kind of box is handed into his hands. The Duke asks his comrade not to tell anyone about this. Haniel decides that they should try to take the box back, but she would rather die of cold than put the plan into practice. Looking inside the carriage, she sees that Duke Pyra has fallen asleep. He fell asleep with the box in his hands, which means there was something important in it. She manages to take the box and fly away, leaving the showdown with the demons for later. Then she came to a place where she hoped no one would see her. Now all that remains is to check the contents of the box. But at that moment, a sword unexpectedly lands on her shoulder. Turning around, Haniel saw the Emperor standing behind her. She thought that he was here too, because he was hunting demons. Richard asks Bien to check what's in the box. His assistant says in surprise that it is empty. Now Haniel needs to find Duke Pyr immediately. Bien asked if he should follow her, but Richard said no. Richard doesn't understand how he didn't realize that the girl in the bedroom was Haniel. Richard is sure he knows the culprit, so he suggests going back. Unexpectedly, the Emperor noticed his bloodline. News reached Scarlet that Richard was pursuing a demon. As a result, they managed to reveal the identity of Duke Pyra. But his mother says it's too late. The father blames himself for spending so much time with the Duke without knowing who he really was. Scarlet asked Richard if he remembered why they went on this trip. The more he participated in the war, the more demons attacked him. All this time they were looking for the cause, and they managed to find a black shard. Recently, the same was found in the castle after Sven's death. They were only able to find one fragment. They need to find out what this shard is to understand their plan. Richard also understands that they need to find out about this sooner. But now the Emperor is most concerned about Haniel. Scarlet is worried about the unrest in the palace right now. Chloe will not return to the palace due to injury, and Enika is forced to leave the palace. This means that the Madrand family will have a great chance. Richard knows this very well, and now asks to be left alone. Scarlet is sure that Richard is worried about Haniel. Her husband reassures her that their son is strong and can handle it. After all, his parents raised him like that. Richard accepted the fact that he had fallen in love with Haniel. He wanted to hug her, confess his feelings, and take her away from this dangerous place. He decides that it is worth talking to those who were close to her. Although everyone is already asleep, Richard cannot wait for the morning. Suddenly, he noticed one of the candidates in the yard. He wondered what Yenica was doing here at this hour. Richard noticed a glow coming from behind the bush she had entered. He was genuinely surprised when a bird came out of there. Richard watches her fly away with the clothes in her beak. A memory of chasing a man, only to find only clothes behind him, came to his mind. Now a phoenix suddenly flies to him. Haniel managed to catch up with Duke Pier, but both the carriage and the mansion were empty. It seems he has decided to end everything that connected him with demons. It will be difficult to move around in human form. And at that very moment, she noticed Richard. She flew up to him and chirped, asking if anything hurt. Richard was glad that Phoenix had returned and flown to him. The bird lands on his palm, and he suggests going to their room. They both return to the palace and go to bed. Phoenix fell asleep almost immediately because she was very tired. Richard asks Bien to go and find the palace magicians. Richard hopes that with this, they will finally learn the truth. A few days later, Richard gave Phoenix some kind of toy. He allows Phoenix to take a walk while he is not in the palace. The Emperor tells her that she can return at any time. Haniel noticed that the Emperor had been acting strangely lately. He used to lock her in a cage, but now he allows her to move freely, and the bell he gave doesn't even ring. She thinks he had a sudden change of mood. Suddenly, she noticed the man who had previously communicated with the Duke of Pira. She noticed that he was now dressed in a magician's costume. Haniel transforms into a human, deciding to follow him. The book wrote that with each floor, the protective magic increases, and he seems to have the skills to remove magic. By the energy, Haniel recognizes Duke Pier, who has disappeared. High-ranking demons can intercept human bodies and move between them. For some reason, this man is still in the palace, even though all the fragments have been collected. The magician thinks that he should still go to the Emperor's bedroom. Realizing that this is going too far, Haniel decides to take action. She said that he would be in trouble if he intended to harm the Emperor. The magician asks her who she is, assuming that someone sent her here. Haniel remembers that Grafani was definitely talking about the black fragment. She needs to get as much information out of him as possible. The magician refuses to believe her, but she asks him what this Holy Grail is. Nothing will come of the magician Haniel's death anyway, and he says that he will not give her anything anyway. The nights are already approaching, and Haniel decides to deal with him. She promises to ruin everything for him by hitting him in the face and disappearing. The pieces torn apart by the goddess must be found to awaken the king and punish the human world. But one of the demons believes that it would be better if they themselves ruled the human world. One way or another, they also noticed his existence. This happened back at the time of the meeting with the Emperor during the war. He thinks they sent an angel to the Emperor, and he guesses that this angel is a girl with silver hair. They sent Rosalind there to destroy her, and with their power, they will rule the human world. While Enika was sleeping, Haniel tried to wake her up. When she woke up, she screamed, asking her what she was doing here. Haniel says she encountered a demon that had moved into another person's body. She thought they were hunting for the Holy Scriptures, but she found out that they needed Richard for some reason. She's not sure she can handle all the demons alone. First, Yanika asks Haniel to calm down. She promises to go to the kingdom and talk to the goddess and the teacher. Yanika asks Haniel not to worry, promising that they can handle it. Thanks to Yanika, she calmed down, but the tension did not go away. Haniel isn't sure she can really say that. She was passing by a familiar place. When I decided to go inside, I found no one there. The days spent here were really fun. Richard snuck up to her and asked what she was doing. Haniel screamed, startled by his appearance. She remembers that they had met before when he was dressed as a killer. But now it is too late for Haniel to hide her face. Richard simply isn't afraid of her, because now he knows who she is. Haniel doesn't understand how this happened, because she hid as best she could. Richard took her hand and led her deeper into the room. He asks her not to blame herself and not to worry. He still has one more person to finish off, and then he'll be back. By giving her that bell, Richard confirmed all his suspicions. He finally realized that Haniel was his phoenix. The book he read said that creatures used to turn into birds. It was them that the goddess took, and perhaps Haniel was one of them. Richard entertains the idea that Haniel is an angel. If this is indeed true, then it explains her actions. Richard isn't sure if it's okay to send a heavenly angel on such a mission. Richard comes to that same magician man. He asks to fulfill his wish and remove the seal personally. But Richard says he hasn't fully remembered everything yet. The magician assures that everything will work out with the last fragment. Grabbing him, Richard asks who gave him permission to disappear. He asks him to find out everything that Anjamos is planning. Richard understands why demons attacked him during the war, and he thinks that it is not Helene who should laugh at him. The goddess informed Yaniki that the seal had been removed. She will ask Enika to tell her what happened. The demons plan to find all the fragments and then disappear. They talk about the Holy Scriptures, but Enika does not know their contents. Haniel has found love in the human world and is being hunted by demons. That is why Enika immediately hurried to the goddess. The goddess welcomes her back to the heavenly world. She recalls how Enika herself begged her to let her go. Enika returned safe and sound, and now something else is important. Once upon a time, there was an angel who loved the human world. At the same time, in the human world, there lived a girl who was personally chosen by the goddess. They were allowed to transform into birds to convey her will. They could also fight demons to take care of people. But the brother and sister stood out among them. The goddess wanted to prepare them for the candle with the demons. But the others didn't like it. They considered them dirty orphans. People were sure that the prophecy was wrong. Useless children cannot have such power. They knew that the youngest of them was so weak that he could die at any moment. They decided that if they were gone, the prophecy would change. They tried to drive them out of the village because the children were infected with the plague. But the girl assured them that her brother was healthy. They threw stones at her and she got injured. They asked them to get out of here immediately. After some time, they finally left the village. But they still followed them to prevent them from leaving alive. The heroine prayed to the goddess every day. It's hard to believe that she got this in return for her efforts. But the demons still caught up with her, and now she has nowhere to run. But if you think about it, he would feel sorry to kill her like this. He wants to give her a good experience before he dies. But suddenly blood started coming out of his mouth, and he died. Richard saved her, and this is the third time he has done this. Heliana never imagined that love between an angel and a human would end like this. Enika asks what they did, but now she had better hurry to the centaur to fulfill the request. Richard asks Haniel not to go anywhere and to stay here, but Haniel won't defeat the demons by sitting here. The maid Katerina came in and prepared everything necessary. Richard warns her not to go out under any circumstances. Haniel realized she had no choice. From that day on, Haniel didn't even leave her room. Katerina asked her if she needed anything. Fortunately, she is now under less surveillance than before. Katerina thought that the girl was uncomfortable here. She thought that Haniel didn't want to see her. Katerina thinks that Richard and Haniel really have feelings for each other. Haniel decided to ask what happened in the palace after her escape. She needs this in order to move around the palace more freely. And besides that, Haniel is worried about Rachel. Katerina says that her revelation shocked the former emperor and empress. But even though they were lied to, they don't think Haniel is a bad person. Moreover, they believe that the heroine had her own reasons for doing this. The Greta family almost got into trouble, but they admitted their mistake, and everything was smoothed over. And Rachel became the emperor's squire. Serched personally wrote her a letter of recommendation. Rachel must be training hard right now. Haniel was afraid that innocent people were hurt because of her. Because of what happened, the ministers began to actively promote Lady Modrend to become empress. And if this continues, Rosalind will become empress. The moment Richard touched the Holy Scripture, all his memories returned to him. Even from his first meeting with Haniel, he realized that she was different from others. That girl from the past is Haniel. She is destined to become empress. There is no room for others in the emperor's heart. And he also needs to deal with the ministers first. Along with his memory, the ability to sense demons returned to him. It seems that he is the very king that the demons are talking about. It will be easier to destroy all the demons at once. He will have to change public opinion in favor of Haniel. And he needs to find a way to get rid of the demons in this palace. Richard wondered what he should do and what to do. Having remembered something, he asks to end the meeting early. This way they can dispel all doubts regarding Haniel. Richard can't believe he just thought of this. He opens the door and walks into Haniel's room. He hugged her, knowing that they would never have to be separated again. Haniel blushed at the unexpected closeness. The emperor will ask not to misunderstand him. He thought that if she loved him, she would want to see him. Haniel confirms that she wanted to see him, but didn't expect a hug. The girl was surprised to notice that he was taking off his coat. Later, she asked if it was scary that Richard came to her like that. Haniel heard that he was marrying one of the remaining candidates, but Richard told her that there seemed to be something she didn't know. Richard hates the Modrend family and would not like to associate his life with them, and in general, he really is going to marry Haniel. He doesn't dislike her, and moreover, she herself confessed her love to him. Haniel was genuinely surprised as she jumped out of bed. She reminds him that now everyone thinks she's a liar. That's why she feels she can't be around him after this. Richard took her hand and suddenly moved her onto his lap. The man asks her not to worry and to trust him. He promises that the wedding will go without problems, and they will live happily together. Richard somehow makes Haniel's heart beat faster. Before leaving, the emperor asks her to keep the coat for herself. This way, the girl will have a reason to come to him. At that moment, Haniel realized that he truly loved her. The Kingdom of Sylvania wishes to arrange a meeting as soon as possible. Delaying it will be beneficial, and it will be better to follow Richard's plan. Richard says that, based on their response, they can begin. Now he asks Crusoe to send out announcements throughout the capital. They need to make Haniel an empress, so she won't even think about leaving him. Soon, an emergency release appeared on the city streets. The newspaper says that Haniel is indeed the Princess of Sylvania. People can't believe it because Haniel has already been eliminated from the candidates. Meanwhile, Haniel asks Katerina why she took her outside. The maid looks at her with pride, already considering her an empress. The maid tells her that now she need not be afraid to return to the palace. All suspicions have been removed, and the fact that Haniel is no longer a candidate does not matter. Katerina said that her feelings and the feelings of the emperor were much more important. She asks Haniel to return with her head held high. His Majesty has already paved the way for Haniel. Meanwhile, Rosaline, having learned of the news, asks for paper to be brought to her for writing. She is not going to give in and give up what she believes is her place to Haniel. No matter what it takes, Rosalind is determined to become empress. Now the emperor is in full swing preparing for the wedding, but he said that he would definitely find a way to bring Haniel back. The father of the family, Modrand, orders the emperor to be stopped. They can't let him take their place. The demon eavesdropping on them considers them all fools, but it's even for the best, as long as they are all under his influence. He will be able to rule people and take over this world. The dress Haniel is wearing is slightly different from the ones she has worn. As she was trying it on, Katerina arrived. Haniel said that everything was fine, and the dress was very comfortable. But the maid is very sorry that she will have to take it off. Since something came to her, she will have to wear something lighter. Haniel met with His Majesty, apologizing for making him wait. He got angry because he wanted to see her in a wedding dress, but the maid herself said that it was better not to show up in it for now. She seems to think that something bad might happen. Haniel asks Richard if he wants to see him. He is not sure that the wedding will go smoothly, since the problem with the demons has not been solved, and public opinion of Haniel is still weak. Richard asked if she would show him the dress if he asked. They sent troops to Sylvania, and they responded by introducing Haniel as their princess. She thought that Richard would refuse, but would not seduce her in any way. It's a pity that now he will have to wait until the wedding. Richard unexpectedly kissed Haniel on the cheek. He asks her to get used to it, because they will soon get married. The emperor invites her to take a short walk before the meeting begins. Haniel says she'll have to get used to other things too. He kissed her first and reproached her with the wedding, and now it's her turn to practice. So the girl pulled him towards her and kissed him on the lips. Now the demonic forces are divided, because they have to pretend to be humans. One of the magicians appeared and brought what Richard asked for. Richard said he would reveal his true identity at the wedding, so he asks the magician to prepare an army for his return. He promises him that he will bring a whole army of demons. He will need to warn Chad and Bien, so that they are ready for their arrival. He feels sorry for Haniel that he is rushing her into marriage. It turns out that the demon turned into Richard and commanded the magician. The Modron family is already under his influence, and therefore, if anything happens, they can blame everything on them. Lord Angemos's plans are always perfect, as other demons believe. Anzimos is confident that this time they will take over the entire world. He wants to rebuild it without the king's help. A lot of people have gathered at the emperor's wedding. The demons are already getting ready. The magician doesn't understand what Anzimos is doing here. He is confident that in any case, everything will be as he wishes. And whatever Angemos does here, it doesn't matter. Now that the king has sided with the magician, victory will be his. Richard decides to deal with the demons first, and then conduct the ceremony calmly. He specifically ordered that Haniel's dress be made comfortable. Finally, they announced that the new son of the empire, the empress, was entering the hall. Haniel is wearing that same dress, and a crown is shining on her head. Crusoe suggests to Richard that he must meet the empress. This is the second time his heart has started beating faster. Richard approached her, saying that he had always thought she was beautiful. He said that even angels would envy her beauty. Haniel is also worried about the demons, hoping that everything will go smoothly. Richard is very sorry to spoil the atmosphere, but it will be better for both of them. At this moment, the magician receives a signal ordering him to act. He suddenly transforms into a demon, frightening everyone around. The demon calls upon the other demons to show their true forms. The knights ask the guests to run away, promising to protect them. Angemose doesn't understand why the mage transformed in front of so many people. He thinks he just wants to die too early. Angemose is going to take on Haniel to change people's minds. He exchanged glances with Rosalind, and they smiled at each other. Angemose asks the emperor if he thinks something is wrong. He asks how the proud knights of the empire allowed so many demons to enter here. He finds it suspicious that Haniel returned here after the accusation. She can't believe she's being accused of this demonic rebellion. Rosalind also screams that Haniel was accused of treason. The magician realized that Angemose had decided to set him up. Haniel is angry. She needs to understand what is happening. Richard finds her annoyed expression cute. He decides that he's had enough of teasing her and will now set the stage for her. Suddenly, something started happening to the demons. Haniel realized that the guy was also a demon, and their powers were divided. She remembers that it is her duty to fulfill this mission. Haniel hands the bouquet to Richard and asks him to hold it. The girl also asks him not to worry, saying that she will protect him. It seems like the demons have lost their minds because of that aura. Now Haniel needs to focus on the fight. She runs and attacks Angemose, hitting him with her staff. Haniel asks them all for one favor, to die. She could take out Angemose with one blow. The mage realized that Haniel was using divine power. Now the demon is absolutely sure that she is a divine warrior. Anyway, he thinks that with the king there will be no problem. The demon orders everyone to attack this girl, and the king of hell too. But for some reason, all the demons were stuck in place. One of the demons told him that he could not move. There should be no one among people who is able to control them. But Wales realized too late that this was all Richard's doing. This confuses him, because the king should be on their side. But Richard doesn't even think about fighting, admiring Haniel. To clear the angel's name, Richard lured them here and used them. Haniel noticed that Wales was about to attack Richard. But suddenly, her divine power reached its limit. The demon indignantly asks how Richard dared to deceive him. Hanid asks Hiliana to save this man by any means necessary. She attacks the demon and asks him not to touch Richard. At this moment, a large bright circle appears, similar to protection. A second later, all the demons evaporated like ashes. Now that Haniel has defeated the demons, all suspicions will disappear. Richard was startled when Haniel, losing her strength, fell to the floor. Haniel could tell from the clouds that she had returned to the heavenly world. She hopes that Richard is now safe. Heliana greets her and congratulates her on her return. Haniel, in fear, asks the goddess what she should do. She fears that she was unable to save Richard, even with all her divine power. She cries because she couldn't protect her loved one. But Heliana asks her not to worry, because she saved everyone. Haniel doesn't understand how this is possible. She suddenly feels divine power filling her. Heliana congratulates Haniel on becoming an angel.